Bill is coming.
Alice, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so seeing that it's 7 o'clock, I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the June 13th meeting of the Robertsfield Improvement Committee. I'd like to let everybody know that the Chelmsford Telemedia is broadcasting tonight's meeting live. And for folks watching at home or watching on their computer, just want to remind everyone that the meeting documents that we're presenting, as well as the master plan document and site plans and everything else that we talk about today, are available at robertsfield.org. And you can find tonight's meeting information on the homepage at the bottom under the June 13th meeting heading. So I encourage folks to check that out. I'll ask if anyone here is recording the meeting. Seeing none, I will start our meeting with the way we always start our meeting, with this public input. And if anybody in the room has anything that they wanted to share before. Jim, would you like to? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Do you want to go first?
It doesn't matter.
Jim, did you have something that you wanted to share?
I have lots I want to share.
Well,
You can go first if you like. I'm in no hurry.
okay. And there'll be lots of opportunity to talk throughout the meeting as well, so.
Okay.
Yes.
I put something together trying to answer the question, what's a tree worth? Try to put it in dollars and cents rather than emotional issues. And looked at it in terms of shade. If you're putting up shade structures, then obviously shade has a value. Tie it in with that. On the plans, called for, I believe it was 25 by 20 shade structure. Gives you about 500 square feet. Cost is, median, I believe, was about $22,000. So the cost per square foot of shade is $44. Can we accept that? Now we'll take a look at some trees, and these are the 5 trees that are located, that are going to be inside the playground area. And I just happened to pick those 4. I could have picked some other ones. You have a crabapple, sugar maple, whatever. The spread is what I'm going to concentrate on. That's the spread of the canopy in feet. Next, please. Okay, so that gives us a square footage of that crabapple. Gives you 660 square feet. $10.75, a total of 4,400 square feet. Up. Next, please. We took a look and we said if 1 square foot of shade is worth $44, then we extend this out, and there we get our values. To give you some way of looking at it as to what is the value, or what are the value of these trees. It doesn't look like they cast that much shade, but I think it's more of an optical illusion than anything else with the lower branches. Total, $197,000. So I think they are worth protecting. And unfortunately, I don't think that plastic fence is going to do it. So they are valuable. Hopefully you folks will keep that in mind when you're making your decisions. Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's the goal of the presentation, because we already said we really want to keep the trees in the playground.
Right.
I'm understanding the goal of your presentation is that you want us to put the fence around it while they're doing the construction. Is that your point?
Sturdier fence.
Yeah. And the second question I have, just to be clear, because there was some debate before. Before you had told us we can't put picnic tables or anything else under the trees.
No, I didn't say that.
I thought you didn't want the compression of the roots or
It
whatever.
depends. If they're treated properly with a good layer of wood chips, that would probably be just fine.
Okay.
But if it's just bare soil, and particularly after the trees have been damaged, then, you know.
So it's okay to put, because that was my impression, I thought it was,
No,
that we
wood
couldn't
chips are
put.
fine, just keep them away from the trunk. Unfortunately, nowadays, it's getting to be quite the fashion to take your wood chips or your mulch or whatever and pile it right up under the trunk. And that's, might look good, but it's not good for the tree.
Okay.
But, you know, there had been discussion about, oh gee, it'll cost money for them to put fences in. Well, yeah, but then again, look at what you're protecting. That has some value too.
And I guess to circle back to the conversation that we're talking about, in the tree protection guidelines, we've identified that we want to put a perimeter fence around each of the trees, but it's a snow silt fence, is that what it's called?
That was,
Yeah,
that is not a recommendation that I would go with, but that I think was.
that was what Steve
Yes.
left it.
But that's where the last time we talked about this, we all,
Yeah.
in consensus, said that was
Yes.
the way we were going to go.
Yes.
And so are you saying that you don't support that, that you feel like?
I still don't support that. I would prefer you use chain link fence in 8-foot sections. Doesn't have to be tremendously tall. But that, I tried to find some pictures. The same thing happened at the library. They have the specifications, you know, 12 times the diameter of the trunk and whatever, but it was never followed.
Nope.
So they put up some plastic fence, not at the location, and then midway through it, it was all knocked down and whatever else. So it was totally useless.
The one difference, though, that I see, the library was a different kind of, there was a lot more digging and project happening at the library. We're not proposing doing much to the land around those trees.
Well, that depends on what you do with that playground.
We're pulling out the equipment and we're leveling the ground and putting in new equipment.
Leveling the ground can be the
Yeah.
problem.
I think the other thing that is different is that the library was a private company doing the
Yeah, and this is
work, and this is all going to be overseen by the town.
Well, that doesn't give me any joy.
I think we have a single point of supervision in place, or at least that was our expectations, or what we've identified as our expectations for it. I think that one of the concerns that I had, or I heard, were that if we did the fencing, the chain link fencing around it, it sits in concrete blocks, and there was concern that kids would climb onto the fencing and then it would fall over. So
You have chain link fence all the way around the library. I don't believe any kid ever fell off of that.
well, just because it's a playground.
It's just common, I think, procedure. You probably, if you're a private individual, you probably can't get insurance, liability insurance, without a fence enclosing your work area. And this is what the new standard is those sections of chain link fence, you rent them. At the end of the job, they come along, they pick them up, and they take them back.
I really respect your opinion, and I really appreciate your participation in all of this. I just want to say that up
Okay,
front.
no, it's,
You've contributed a tremendous amount to this, so I thank you for bringing this to us. Again, is there any comments? Or?
I had a different question that I was going to ask you last week, actually, because I was at the playground last week, and I'm sorry, I should know. I took the environmental classes, but I don't remember the names of the trees. But the tree the tree right in the dead center of the playground, it's one of the prettier ones, nice and rounded.
okay, probably little leaf linden.
It's incredibly low to the ground. This is not for this meeting, this is more for public input to understand what we do going forward. Can that be trimmed up so you can actually walk underneath it without damaging the
Yes.
tree? Okay, that's all I need. If it's properly done, that's all I
Yes.
need. It's just,
Yes,
because
in fact, that probably would be good.
it needs some, because I have
Get
to
more
duck
people under there,
significantly.
More
Yeah.
shade, make
Yeah.
it more useful, you don't get whacked in the head.
Yeah, yeah.
There's actually a couple of other ones there that need a little
Okay.
turning too, but not too much.
That's fine,
Any other comments?
Yeah, I was wondering, is it appropriate to include this kind of data point as an appendix in the master plan?
Sure.
I mean,
Certainly include it.
I mean, anytime you can, I mean, it's a metric. Somebody will be able to look at it and say, okay, yeah, this, have perhaps a different idea of what the, more than an aesthetic value to the trees.
I'm okay with that. Is that something that you guys would like to see
I'm
added?
fine with that. I think we have to, I think we can definitely add in this important piece. Like we talked about last week, we have to figure out how to craft our master plan.
Right.
Because it's, now that we saw what the Varney Park was, we're already 45 pages over what they presented, and we're not done yet. So we do have to find a way to get all the information in there and make it available, but make sure we don't overwhelm the actual presentation to the Board of Selectmen, so we don't just get shot down because we never got to our point.
Yep, absolutely. What about the specific, Jim's specific concern about the wire fencing versus the snow silt fence? Is that something you guys
My
want to
biggest
go-
concern was I defer to the two experts. There's one expert here, the DPW was the other expert, and which way to go and what's the typical practice in the situation at hand. I thought the smaller fence was gonna be sufficient. Because like you said, it's known to them, we're writing it down to them, they can't use the excuse, we handed it off to somebody else. We didn't mean for it to happen, but it did. At the end of the day, we gotta let them do their job, and hopefully we can guide them to do it properly, but we can't tell them every step of the process to do their job. So I don't think we could put all of that in the master plan, personally, but.
I mean, so I'm hearing you want to leave it as it is.
I want to leave it as it is, but I'm one person on this. I honestly don't think we vote until we have, well, we can vote now, that's fine. We have a
No, I
quorum,
just want to know
so-
if we can change.
So are public concerns part of what you present as, or include in appendices for the master plan?
And can you be more specific? I don't.
So for instance, this is a concern that Jim has brought before us and laid out very, very carefully. Is it appropriate to say that there were two opposing thoughts and?
I mean, I guess we could, but I mean, realistically, it's one single bullet
Okay.
point on a thing. So I think if we feel like it should be changed, we should change it. If we don't, if we think it's okay to leave it as it is, we should leave it as it is. You know what I mean? Like,
That's fine.
and there definitely will be comments from the public, from the surveys and all the other things, and I can certainly include that in the discussion, and it could come up as a bullet point in the public input session next Tuesday as well.
Okay. Okay.
I'm in favor of leaving it as it is. We had a great deal of conversation about this, all of us, with input from Steve at the DPW, with input from Mr. Martin here. I think we considered a lot of different things. We talked about the expense. We talked about pretty much everything. It's all in the minutes, because I took some careful minutes on that. So I'm in favor of leaving it as the committee had decided.
Okay. Kate, did you have anything to add?
I agree with Alice, just leaving it as it is, because I remember we did have a very lengthy conversation, and a huge concern was the safety of the chain link fence. Just where it is, it's a different atmosphere than the library, it's a playground. Kids are gonna, it's something new, they're gonna explore it. So I'm in favor of leaving it as is.
Okay. Jim, thank you again for bringing this to our attention, and once again, thank you for everything you've done. I really appreciate your participation and help with everything.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Any other comments about this part? Jim, did you have a?
My name is Jim Lane. I reside at 290 Westford Road. I've been a resident there for 20 years, and I'm a lifelong resident of Chelmsford. Lived in just about every single side of Chelmsford you can live in. I'm here tonight to talk a little bit about I'm also a Precinct 7 town meeting rep, so I represent that precinct. And I've been the chairman of two master plans here in town, the 2010 Town of Chelmsford's master plan, as well as the Center Village master plan that's currently ongoing. So I'd like to start with a couple of questions, if that's okay.
Certainly. You have the floor.
Maybe you can get back to me. Bill and I have been corresponding through email quite a bit. I sent him a pretty lengthy email with some of my concerns on there, and he has my permission to share that. It's not any secrets. It's really what was passed along to me by good neighbors. as well as some of my own concerns. So the first question I have is, will this committee, or is there going to be any type of implementation committee that's going to ongo and oversee the progress with this park, not only while it's going through construction, but the maintenance of the park afterwards?
One of our recommendations within the master plan is that the town form a Roberts Field Advisory Board that would oversee the implementation and do exactly the kinds of things I think you're referring to. We specifically asked the town manager about that. He said that that was the probable scenario, but depending on the outcome of funding, he was going to hold judgment on whether or not they were going to do that or not. So, and it would be an advisory board with 3 to 5 members probably.
My recommendation on that is that that board reports back to the Board of Selectmen on an ongoing basis. Number one, that board gets established and that it has some authority to be able to oversee that park, specifically from maintenance perspective. Because the maintenance in that park, in my 20 years there, it hasn't been very well maintained. Matter of fact, you know, if you go up and you look at the chain link fence along the ball fields, there's still high grass all along it. The ball fields haven't been maintained. So the town does what the town does, but if you're going to put $750,000 of these folks' money, my money, your money, into, you know, putting all these great things into Roberts Field, it should be maintained with a detailed maintenance plan, not what I'm seeing in the plan now. What I see in the plan now is I see responsibilities laid there, but there's no detail around it. How they're going to maintain it, when they're going to maintain it, what's the frequencies of the maintenance going to be. None of that's outlined in that plan. So I just think that before you guys take this before the Board of Selectmen or any other entities onto town meeting and want to ask for funds, you should have a little bit more detail around that plan, because it will be asked. And I can tell you from experience on 2 plans in this town, they ask a lot of questions and they're going to want answers to those questions.
Can I interrupt just 1 second? Are you aware of any examples of maintenance plans that we could emulate? Because
you have several that were already created in this town. So there's an open space master plan that was created. I didn't oversee that. I wasn't on that committee, but they've got a pretty detailed plan on there.
But for the maintenance part specifically?
Yeah, I can get you some stuff on that, I'm sure.
Okay, that'd be really helpful. I'll look too, but I just haven't had any success in finding
Yeah,
that.
a lot of it's, you know, common sense with frequencies attached to when they're going to cut the grass, when they're going to remulch, when they're going to be claying the infields. You're going to have a lot of activity going on.
Mhm.
And you're going to have some new activity, which is going to bring me to another point in a few minutes. The second question I have for you, has there been any questions or analysis done on what the baseball, the Chelmsford youth baseball, what their population is today versus what it was 10, 15 years ago before lacrosse came in?
Bill's not here, he has the information, it's decreased, but
Significantly,
they're going from, I think that's one of the reasons he's going from 3 fields, which you can't even tell the 3rd field was there anymore, but 3 to 2. But yeah, it has been decreased, but they do have a schedule of overlaying times of the expected usage, and the fields do still get filled up during the peak seasons. But yeah, we did talk about there was a decrease because of lacrosse.
I know that, you know, just so you understand proximity, there's one house between myself and my neighbors here, right? So they're abutters, they're right there. And whatever you do will affect them tremendously. I'm a little bit away from it, but I still hear all the noise that goes on. I still hear the mischief that goes on after dark. The park is used, and that's great. It's been there a long time, and I'm happy that it's an asset to the community as well as the neighborhood. And I first want to start, before I go on with my gripes, I appreciate everything you're doing, because I know exactly what you're going through and how hard this process is, and it's lengthy. Public input is critical, and to get all the neighborhoods involved is not easy. You can send out as many emails and post on Facebook and things like that, but to get the people actually in, it's not an easy process to follow. And it doesn't get any easier as you get the plan completed and you move forward to doing your implementation and overseeing all that. and then the ongoing pieces afterwards are still challenging. So a couple of things that I wanted to bring up. Bill, you and I had exchanged emails. I had brought a concern regarding the walkway that goes around.
Right.
My understanding is it's an exercise walkway. It'll travel pretty much the perimeter of the park.
Roughly, it's 0.35 miles within the inside of the park and around the outside of the playground.
You know, ADA compliant, is what I
Yes,
understand.
that's our expectation, yes.
And I wish Steve was here tonight, because I'd really rather talk directly to him where it was his back input. But asphalt, I think, is a terrible idea. It should be a natural surface up there. And there's many reasons for that. It's a natural park, it's green space. I think the exercise track is fantastic, it's a great idea. I think it'll be well used. I think asphalt's a big mistake.
Okay.
I think it's path of least resistance for the highway department to come back and say that, because it's the easiest and the least expensive for them to do, and the least maintenance afterwards. Yes, if you put something in like a crushed gravel, or you put in a sand base, or you put in, they even make pervious type gratings where you can fill them with stone. And I have several reasons for that. Number one, it's better on people's joints that are going to be using that for walking. We have a lot of elderly people that use that. We have a lot of people that will use it for jogging. We use it for just walking around safely in the park, so they're not out on the main road on those sidewalks. And I just think, from a health perspective, that's where we should be going as a community, especially where this is an open green space that's used quite a bit. And the numbers are tremendous up there, and I know you've spent some time up there. I've been there for 20 years. I see the activity that goes on in that park. It's well used, which is a great thing. I think, again, the walkway will even increase that usage, and people will go there just to use the walkway, to have a safe pathway to travel, and who knows, maybe even travel into the woods and use some of those nice trails that you and the open space stewards have worked so hard on. In addition to that, I think once you put asphalt down, you start to embrace and entertain skateboarders and rollerblading and bicycling, things like that are going to create a use there that's going to be a safety issue with small children, elderly that are going to be on there, people walking their animals. It's only going to be a 6-foot wide pathway, as I understand. I just think that putting asphalt down now entices people to start using it for skateboards, rollerblading, and bicycles, at the top 3, right? And I just think that's going to be a safety issue. I think it's a big mistake. I think if you go with something that's natural, you protect the green space, you put something in that really blends well, it's going to still be used, and you don't put any unnecessary safety component in there and put anybody at risk. So that's my input.
Can I ask a quick, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I probably have the same question. You were on a plan before. Do you know, is the crushed, or you could probably answer too, is the crushed gravel or that kind of, is that ADA compliant, generally speaking?
Not just regular crushed gravel, so you'd have to put in, and I put a specific detail on the plan, it's something that we researched for the Grist Mill project in the center, it's what we use for the brick walk. So it's called pressure fines, and it's put in layers, and it's fine enough that it holds together so that it can be compliant, if it's constructed correctly.
What's the difference per thing
It's
for?
not loose.
No, I mean cost-wise, from asphalt to that, are we talking 2 times, 3 times?
It's a little bit more expensive.
Okay, that's
but
what
it's not
I
double the cost.
I like the idea. I
Remember,
just
when
wanna
you
make
put
sure.
asphalt in, you still gotta put down a binder.
Yep.
Right? You still gotta put down a construction layer, what they call crusher run,
Yep.
right, the binder coat.
I don't think any of us love the idea of asphalt. It was just, it's what is easy and what was in the plan of money-wise that we thought we could do. So.
You understand, and I'm not here to
Yep.
badmouth anybody, but it's a
Yep.
bad idea.
Yep,
Bad
that's
idea, and
taken.
it's not gonna go well up there, so hopefully you'll reconsider that and look into maybe some different type of material that can be used there that's ADA compliant. It exists out there. The natural pathway that we have in our plan for the Center Village Master Plan, which I chair now, has that type of material, and Grist Mill is gonna put that in as part of their project there. And hopefully the other natural pathways will follow and be consistent with that. The hardscape there is gonna be brick for most of it, and the crosswalks will be, the construction that they are. But enough about that plan. The pavilions was something else that I wanted to talk about. So you have two pavilions, and I'm sorry, just off my memory, I don't remember the size of them.
One's 20 by 40,
That was the bandstand, right?
and then 20 by 28 and 30 by 40. That's the
40 and 20 by 25.
25.
And the 30 by 40, is that going in on the fire station side?
No, that's going in, the revised plan that we will be looking at tonight, it has the position of that, the playground's on the left-hand side, the western side.
It's that other brown dot.
It's that little brown above the,
Yep.
that's
that.
that's the community bandstand, the 30 by 40, the larger one.
Yep.
And then directly across the field, across the lacrosse field, towards the pond, down, right there.
That.
That's the 20 by 25 smaller pavilion, and that's a multi-use,
What's the reason for having two pavilions? Why not just have one multi-use pavilion?
okay.
Well, the thinking you were thinking originally was in the winter, we're trying to draw people to that side of the park, number one, to give people a place to stop walking. And there was also some talk about during the winter, when people were using the pond as skating potentially, that it was there as well. But it was kind of ideally, we originally wanted the bandstand on that side, but the band didn't think it was going to be useful on that side because of sun and insects. So then everything got kind of tossed and turned around, so.
So the band plays, I believe, and I'll probably be a little wrong on this, is it 6 weeks?
Yeah.
during summer?
It's 6 to 8 performances a year, and we've also had interest from, and this is just from reaching out, we've had interest from the CHS, Chelmsford High School Performing Arts Director of potentially using it for high school performance as well in the spring, summer, and maybe fall.
Just so you know, that's completely new news to us as well.
That just happened since the last meeting, so it's new to everyone, and it's actually in a slide coming up.
Trying to change our perspective as well.
Okay.
So, thank you very much to speak up. Two pavilions, I just don't, you've got a 20 by 30 pavilion there, Bill. I just don't know why you're not considering having one multi-use pavilion. Why do you need two? You're putting in an extra structure that costs more money, more maintenance, and you're taking up additional green space
Right.
that you could be utilizing as open space for people to enjoy.
Right.
And if it was strategically done and positioned so that all entities could use it, I don't have any issue with it. But, I just think two pavilions is overkill. I think it's a wonderful wish list, but, as I told you in my email, my feeling is, and I'm hearing this from my neighbors, and I represent my neighbors tonight as well, that we're putting 10 pounds of potatoes in a 5-pound sack. And it would be great to put all this stuff in, but there's not a lot of open space there. You're gonna have, you've got 2 ball fields, you've got the lacrosse field, you're expanding the playground, right?
Correct.
You're putting in a half basketball court, right?
Correct,
Which
yes.
will be next on my list. But the pavilions, I'm not getting the logic of two
Excuse
different
me, but that's
structures.
because you haven't been coming to these meetings.
I've been watching them,
Well, wait,
they're all televised.
It's
Then
okay.
you would know. It started out with we don't have shade. There are only a handful of trees, shade trees, that are outside of the playground. There is no shade anywhere. So that's the reason why we have one second pavilion over by the pond. There is no shade there. There's nothing you can do other than sit under the trees or try to squeeze into the shade of the garage.
So why not put the one pavilion there?
So, Jim, real quick, I just want to walk you through the logic
It's a
of,
wetland
Wolf.
zone.
So I just want to walk you through the logic of,
It's
at least,
not like this
Wolf,
committee has
please,
not been-
Wolf, please.
I have the same right to speak as he does.
Okay, go ahead, Wolf.
I didn't hear him identify himself. Is that part of the
If you had followed the meetings, you would know who I am. I have identified myself many times. I'm
Wolf,
surprised I
could
didn't
you
know.
identify yourself for the meeting, please?
This is my property here. I have 500 feet along the park. I know where the park is. And I've been to every meeting except last week.
So, Wolf, would you mind, it's okay, would you mind just identifying yourself, please?
I just did. Wolf Bartz, 250 Westford Street on the east side of the park.
Thanks. So I just want to just walk you through at least the rationale for why there's two on there from my perspective, and I'm, you know, if I'm wrong on anything, please correct me. So the process that we followed is that we conducted the community surveys, and in the community surveys, people asked for more shade. People asked for an opportunity to investigate the community bandstand, right? People asked for more facilities around the pond to service skating in the winter, and for more shade on that side of the pond. So throughout this process, we surveyed the community band. The community band didn't believe that they could function on the pond side because of the way the sun sets and because of the insects and whatnot. So they wanted to be on the left-hand side of the park, and that's why that we started on the very top with the pavilion, and there were concerns about it blocking the view from the street.
Just so I understand, the left side facing into the park, like the fire station side, the pond side?
No, you mean the way-
I'm sorry, so we started
Looking at the page right now, the left of the page is where
West side,
the
rather.
playground is.
Okay.
behind Rosie's store, basically in that little triangle area, and then right on the corner of the parking lot was sort of where it was up until the last meeting. And that's sort of been the progression of it. So at least I think as the plan is now, the reason why there's two on there is because there's a need for a community bandstand on the left-hand side based on the feedback that we're hearing, and we're certainly open to this. We're not saying definitively this is the way it's going to be. That's why we're having these meetings. So there's the community bandstand on that side, performance multi-use pavilion, and then there's the other side, which is the pond side, skating side kind of pavilion. So that's at least the logic behind it.
So the shade, and thank you very much, it helps me understand a little bit. So the playground and the community band would basically share the same structure as you have it now?
As we have it now, yeah.
Yes, and one of the benefits of having it in that central location is that it would serve both the playground, the baseball field, as well the lacrosse field. So, a family could conceivably have a picnic there, or at least have a central area and have their kids playing in, a baseball game and then playing in the playground, or doing a lacrosse game and then kids in the playground. So
So the
it's,
second structure, Bill, is that to service the pond area?
And the walking path and that.
What's the purpose of it, just for shade?
it's a pond, the pond side is really the purpose of it, is to bring a sitting structure and to bring people over to the other side, because for years, the park has primarily been a playground side, and then, it's just sort of, there was nothing going on the other side, so people never really went over there to visit it. That's changed a lot, I think, since the trails have been added and the Pollinator Park's been built, and there's a lot of stuff going on over there. People are starting to kind of, look at the park as a whole, and that was the intent, I think, was to give a seating place for folks on that side, and then it would obviously serve there was a call for more sitting facilities and skating facilities in the wintertime, and that seems to serve that purpose.
And there's a shack there now, isn't there?
A 4 to 5 seat skate shack there now, yes.
Would that remain?
Yes.
So you also have a maintenance shed there that once upon a time had a roof line that extended beyond the back of it. It's since been taken down. It's all fallen
The
apart.
garage? Yes.
Maintenance garage.
Yeah, the DPW garage. So that's, that used to have a lean-to in the back, and that's been taken off. Used to be trailers on the side of it, and those have been taken away.
Yeah.
So it's, and I don't, in the plan itself, that's going to continue to be used as a storage facility for the town. We've actually put in the plan to carve out part of it, adding partition walls to open up to the outer door, so the band could store their seats and stuff that needs to be stored in there, to move it out to the pavilion when they need it and put it back when they don't.
So that was one of my questions. So the community band will use the maintenance shed area for their storage?
A partitioned section of the maintenance shed that only they will have access to for that door.
Because based on what they needed here in Chelmsford Center, that's quite good.
The last discussion that we had, Dave Tweed was here from the community band last time, and he indicated that they would probably be interested in using it during the summer, but they would still maintain their storage here because they were concerned that it wasn't heated, that it might, I guess, cause harm to their
So is
instruments.
that going to be chairs and stuff like that as well?
That's my understanding. He didn't specifically say what was going to go on, what was going to be stored in there, but that was sort of my understanding.
Okay. And then, and you would just it's hard to tell from the print here, but what was the size of the gazebo or the pavilion on the pond side?
20 by
20 by
25.
25. It would accommodate 4 picnic tables that would be movable. They're not the kind that are in the ground. Could be moved, so that could serve as a. And it was sized that way because that would fit the community band's smaller jazz ensemble, but they don't have any interest now.
Yeah,
in
they're not
using
going to
it.
use it on that side.
So they would solely use the one that's on the playground side?
Correct. That was what they've told us.
So back to youth baseball. I wish Bill was here, but I can.
Yeah, he will be here in a little while, so if we want to table any of those.
You're right, there is 3 fields that are there now, but T-ball field is very rarely used, if at all. It's mostly used for practices. Early spring, it's wet quite often. Depends on how much water we get for the spring, but typically early spring it's wet.
Yeah,
It's not really usable.
That's known to the committee.
Pardon?
That's all known to the committee.
These two ball fields that you're having now, this looks like the outfield will spill into where the T-ball field is now. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Yes.
So
This grade-
just so for the record, this is Katie Enright with Howard Stein Hudson, and she's this company has been the one responsible for putting together the site plan drawing. So
As part of the field, to redoing the field and the lacrosse field, the whole area is going to be regraded and revegetated. So some of the little kind of, yes, the outfield is underwater in the spring a little bit. Some of those areas are going to be regraded so that the water shoots off.
So you're raising the grade.
Parts of it. Some of it's just to be evened out more than anything because it's just over time it's settled in different ways. So there's puddles, and so that's going to be evened out and leveled out so it's directly relief from the field a little bit better. And that's not shown on the master plan yet because we don't have any grading yet, but that would be part of, in walking around the fields and talking with Steve, there'll be some kind of fill areas.
And what's the effect on the pond when you start raising the grade?
Nothing, it's very minimal. It's very, very minimal. And it's all going to be pervious, so the effects on the pond is going to be minimal. And we have that side of the wetland flag, so we'll be outside the 25-foot registered with any materials that we bring in. And we would have to go before the commission to implement the plan. So that is probably right.
Okay, so the last thing I had was the basketball, the half basketball court. So what,
and can I just clarify that too? So that's a hardscape play area. So it's basically what it's going to do is there's a section, there's sort of that driveway area behind the Parks garage and behind Engine 3, and there's an area that it's going to square off that area with asphalt, and it would be the single basketball goal, right? And then there'd be a hardscape play area with like games on the painted on the asphalt.
But no fence. It's not a full fence.
No fencing, and then the games would sort of have a theme that would tie back to the fire station, so it would sort of bring the fire station into the plan as well.
and there's no future plans for lights or anything there to light that up after hours?
Well, so the back of the fire station does have a security light, and so we did talk with Chief Ryan, and he said that if they had any issues with, after hours playing and stuff like that, they could just turn the lights off. That they're basically on a timer, and then they were willing to make that accommodation.
And this surveillance system that you have tied into the police station, will this be covered by that?
I've committed to Chief Spinney to get his input on where the security cameras should go, and I've held off on giving him a site plan yet because the parts have been moving so much. I would expect that there would be we have to talk about this, and we have to talk with Chief Spinney, but my expectations would be that there'd be a camera view in all of the areas that have potential for people to be congregating, right? So I would certainly see that as being an area that would need to be covered. Katie, do you have a?
And Steve had talked about, he's familiar with some of the cameras, some of them are hooked up through DPW, and some of them go to DPW, not where they view them, and some of them go to the police station. So he had specified that there were two specific areas with the amount of kind of visibility each of them have that would require, or you would want to have security cameras there. And basically figuring out where they report to was one of the things, because DPWs, we had talked about it at one meeting, that DPW, I guess, or the police station's cameras were full as far as the feeds that could go there, so they may have to switch them around to see who would be viewing the cameras. But that basically two, I think, would be enough to capture kind of all of the improvements within the field. And
I think it was 3, actually.
we had kind of determined that we didn't need to, we had talked about even kind of looking past there into the trails in the forest, and decided that that wasn't something we wanted to do, or the committee decided that was something they didn't want to do at the time. So that was stuff, the security lighting and the cameras themselves were discussed as part of it.
And as far as monitoring, it's in the plan as an expectation that the dispatch would have the feed. I know it was discussed where we haven't really said specifically or gotten feedback from Steve yet where it's gonna, if that's the case. So that's something that we just need to clarify, but that's our expectation at least.
And then the last question I had was just from some of the folks that live on, the 2 folks on McIntosh and 2 on Kathy, had a question about the rear access. That trail that connects in now, there's no plans to, block that off or put anything in that people will still be able to access from that pathway?
Correct. And we've been careful not to, there was a discussion about potentially adding a hardscape path in that area, and we shot that down specifically because we don't want to drive traffic. We don't want people parking in the back there and then walking out, because that's an issue for the people that live in that cul-de-sac there, that they don't want people parking there and then walking into the park.
Yeah, I know that neighborhood, there are people that use the park and they like to access from that side, which makes sense. Walk over it.
Yeah, that's unchanged. I live back there too.
Okay.
That's not changed.
All right, thank you, I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jim. And if you have any other questions, please,
I won't be bashful.
I know. Any other comments or questions about that? Any other public input? Okay. So we will move on. So Katie has provided a revised site plan, which we've already kind of discussed. I don't know, did you want to go over this in more detail? Is there anything else that you wanted to point out?
Right, so we made some of the based on the recommendations from the committee last week, we received kind of an overview from Bill after the meeting last week, and incorporated some of the changes that were requested. I didn't really question anything from the last hearing. Obviously, I wasn't here for some of the conversation. I know that Steve wrote an email back to you today with some explanation about the walking path, and also the number of baseball fields. And again, Bill can address that when he is able to get here. And I know earlier in the process we did talk about the number of people who played baseball and why the need is there. I think Steve in this email today also addressed kind of some of the other fields that are either not able to be used or not in use.
I have slides, so we'll get to that, right?
Those? Okay. And so my only real question, so a couple of things that changed since the last meeting. We had talked about some garden areas. There are some areas that have now been replaced by some seed banks, which are shown on this plan. As we talked about earlier, the larger pavilion has moved kind of in between the lacrosse field and the baseball field and the playground area. And the walkway, although I haven't shown the width reduced here because it would be really hard to even see the walkway at all, I've specified a detail that we used for a different project as far as a pervious walk material, so the crusher fines, and I've shown you a profile on the plan that is a material that we've used for our center project in Chelmsford, and it has been seen by the Center Village Master Plan Committee and also the Conservation Commission, and has seen it in a favorable way.
Well, I'm sorry, what is it called?
Crusher fines?
Crusher Fines?
Yep.
FINDS or
FINES.
FINES? Okay.
So, and that's on the plan. Just one thing related to the walk. I mean, I think some of the conversation that we should have tonight are related to the walk. I think we're going from, we had spoken of a 6-foot paved walk. Now I've been asked to reduce it to a 4-foot pervious walk. I think we need to discuss really what the use of that walk is gonna be, because it was kind of my feeling that the use, based on some of the committee feedback, was that certainly walking, certainly if your child is learning how to ride a bike, and if you've got a baby carriage and you're going to a rear baseball game, being able to cross each other maybe comfortably if somebody's running in the other direction, or if somebody's using a baby carriage and has, one child in hand. 4 feet is really narrow. So I just want you to think about that a little bit when you're thinking about the usefulness. I think Steve's concern with paved versus pervious is something that you can cover in the maintenance of this plan. Obviously, his concern is that, who is going to be maintaining this walk in the future? If it's DPW, certainly their resources are tight. And it's hard for them to get over there all the time. So I think the concern was that with something like the crusher fines or a looser material, that rainwater and storms and heavy usage would cause places to erode and would have to be maintained more often. Not that that's a problem, but you need to think about that. That needs to be addressed in the maintenance aspect of your project. So I think that certainly it's better to use a pervious material when you're dealing, especially in a natural setting like this, that will serve the same purpose, it will reduce the amount of runoff. But you have to make sure that it's properly maintained, or people won't be able to use it the way you want them to.
So would you have information about maintenance of crusher fine paths, or would that be something that Steve would have to provide?
Yeah, I would work with Steve on that to come up with a maintenance schedule. The path that we're doing in the center is a very small section, and there's on-site private maintenance. So it's not like having, this is a large loop. This is almost.
That's going to be maintained by the DPW, so, right.
By the DPW, and it's not, certainly it's not super easily accessible. It's not something they pass every day. So it's going to have to be something that's going to have to be reported to them and checked on a regular basis.
So will you work with him to give us some information about how it's maintained and sort of what
how often and stuff like that.
what necessary steps are?
Just because it will be more difficult and more time sensitive to get out there.
Is there an option C, in your opinion, that we should be looking at that's pervious, that doesn't need the maintenance?
It would be awesome to be able to use porous pavement here. It's just not a good application for the
Okay.
area. You're going to get, because it has kind of the best of both worlds, but you're going to get kids with clay stuck on their cleats.
Yeah.
It's going to get all clogged up and it's going to be a mess.
Okay,
before
so
you
it's
know
not-
it.
yeah.
So it's really, I think it's one or the other. I think they're both good options. I just think one of them is certainly going to be a lot more maintenance heavy. So we need to figure out who's going to be maintaining that and how they're going to be able to accomplish that.
DPW is going to be maintaining that.
Well, so exactly.
Right.
So you have to be comfortable with the fact that it may not be that they can get out there after every major rainstorm, after it's heavily used, if there's a tournament here some weekend to check on some areas, or if there's damage done to it by somebody using the park or trying to driving on it. We'll be able to withstand a good amount of traffic, but it's just different than people.
So can you guys gather that information in time for the public input session, so that when that question comes up, we can present that information? Terrific. Did anybody else have any questions about the crusher fine pass?
No, but when Bill gets here, we should probably debate 6 feet or 4 feet. And
Well, I
decide.
wanted to ask you, so is there a norm, is there an average, like for a park, what's the average width?
We want it to be 6 to 8 feet.
Okay.
The brick walk that we're talking about in the center of town, I think is specified in the documents as 12 even, to be comfortable and to multi-use. 12 is obviously way too much for here, but you want to be able to pass, like I said, if you're with a carriage and you have a toddler in hand, somebody's running at you the other way, you want to be able to pass comfortably and not have to go off the path.
Yeah, same with like a wheelchair or anything. If someone's
Right.
coming with a wheelchair, you want to be able to safely be able to get around them without having to come off the path.
And 6 feet accomplishes that and
Yeah, tightly.
Both of your perspectives?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay.
Okay.
You also,
Public.
oh, I'm sorry, David.
I had one observation. It was briefly discussed last week. I heard that the baseball fields are going to be minimally graded. The grade coming off of the top of the lacrosse field towards the north to the southern section, to me, is significant. It's more than a few feet. Has anyone looked at that you can safely grade the lacrosse field and then also meet up with the ball fields without having a wall that you can have a gentle
Yeah,
slope
no,
into?
there's not gonna be any retaining walls in the middle of these fields. We don't have the exact grading throughout the park, but Steve and I have walked it many times to figure out, and each of these fields are not absolutely flat either. There's some slope to each of these fields, so we'd work to blend. Once we get a full survey, we'd work to blend those, and if something has to rotate a little or shift a little bit to make that happen, there's no way we'd want to put any sort of a retaining wall in the middle of these fields. That would be dangerous.
That was my
It'd be
first thought.
unnecessary, so, no, we can work with the grades that are out there to make it work.
Okay.
There's not gonna be any.
Katie, what would it take just to go out and take a point in the middle of the south side of the cross field, and use a surveyor's instrument to find out exactly what the elevation change
I
would
think
be
it's, I
required?
think it's too early. I mean, I think the next phase, and I think we've priced it out, is to look at a full existing conditions plan. To implement the things that you're looking at implementing, we're gonna have to do a notice of intent through the Conservation Commission. This is a master concept plan essentially. So all of the details and that type of stuff will be worked out. I'm saying that there will be no need for a wall. How we're gonna get from point A to point B, we haven't gotten there yet, but I'm confident that it's in the details that will be worked out as we progress this plan forward. It's like any other project. So
Yeah, my only reason for raising the question is, I mean, I understand what you're saying about the details, but this could be a detail that could involve a lot of money. If in fact you have to pull six, and I'm guessing just from walking out there and projecting and taking some pictures, you're probably looking at bringing some of that elevation up as much as 6 feet.
no, not even, no. Steve and I have walked out there multiple times and looked at grades and looked at the type of materials that'll have to be moved around, and I don't believe that to be the case. Certainly, we'll come in with, once there's a full survey and this goes to a site plan situation, we could do a cut fill analysis based on the field grading, but we're gonna be looking, at where the water needs to flow off the fields, find areas for that water to go so the fields can shed the water better, and where there's proper material for this water. Right now, some of the upper areas are ledge really close to the surface, which we know, so we're gonna want to look at adding a limited amount of material there to make sure that the water flows off, and some grass maybe will have a better chance of growing. And
What I'm hearing you say is you're confident enough now that you don't really need any additional data points to verify it?
yeah, it's way too early in the process.
Can I get you to clarify just a couple of things? So the fields, the athletic fields, so the lacrosse field and the baseball fields, is the expectation that they are going to be level playing fields?
No,
So-
not with each other, no. So
So will lacrosse
will
field have a tilt to it, or is it going to be a level
The lacrosse
field?
field will have to be built per spec, so we'll have to look at the specifications for a lacrosse field and make sure that the pitch is adequate and the pitch is what's required, because obviously you don't want the ball moving on its own. There's specific requirements for lacrosse, there's specific requirements for baseball. The idea was before, we had the baseball field pulled back a little bit further, but before this previous iteration, was to give us a little bit more room to do some grading in between the baseball and the lacrosse. The vision is that the baseball field will be a little bit lower than the lacrosse field.
But the individual fields, so is the baseball field going to be a level field?
To your eye, yes.
Okay, because when,
But there will be pitch to the fields, so we'll be looking at, 1%, 1.5%, depending on what the spec is for a baseball field, to make sure the water flows off the field. But it's not going to be visible, it's not going to be like a 6-inch drop. If the ball falls, it's not going to roll off to one side, but the water will. And that's what we have to look at.
okay,
So-
just from my own personal eyeball test, when I stand at the top of the, outside of the guardrail at the top of the park, and I look out, that's the very top of the hill, right? So if you're going to get the lacrosse field level, just that field level, by the time it gets to the end, right, there's a significant drop down to the baseball fields.
It could be a couple feet, yes.
So,
It could be a slope, it doesn't need to be I would never.
Where's
put
the
a
slope though? Because the slope is gonna have to appear inside the lacrosse field or inside the baseball field because they're so close to each other, there's no
They're
room.
so close to each other now. I mean, the way to do that would be to do, I mean, we could do a full survey of the park, but I think we got that estimate previously, and it was gonna be somewhere in the vicinity of $20,000.
Right, but I'm just trying to
Right.
figure I mean, it doesn't pass my eyeball test.
Yeah, but I think Bill needs to be here for this too, because I think Bill, assuming the water didn't puddle where the hill was, I think Bill would be amenable to the idea. This is why I didn't want to move the path last week, because I didn't want to move things up even further. But I think there is some ability in baseball to have the edge of the outfield have a slight slope to it, as long as it's level within a reasonable part of the outfield, because we're having small kids play here. This isn't a part of the field that's accurate, always being used.
No, these are not, I mean, they're not major league fields, they're
Yeah.
not, somebody's not gonna go out there and check them. If
Yeah.
we need to make up for a little bit in the outfield, we'll have
It's-
to use baseball. That
Yeah, and that's something Bill would have to speak to more than I would, but I see that being okay. The lacrosse field, he was here last week, that does, as you said, that needs to be level to lacrosse standards. But I am hesitant to, and I'm sure it'll come up again today, to move anything up any further, because I think we are running out of room.
Yeah.
We're running out of room.
So, one more quick clarification. Are the fields that are identified in the new plan, both the baseball and the lacrosse fields, are they the same dimensions, same sizes as the ones that are in place there now? Because they look different they look bigger on here.
No, there is what's specified by youth baseball.
The outfield is huge and they don't use it.
Right. Well, that's the thing, is the diamonds, if you look at the diamonds, that's the thing, is you don't see the full, you're not gonna see those delineated outfields in the field.
Right.
Because it's just a space.
But on the other side of that is that the current field sizes and the way they're configured works for baseball, right?
Yeah, but if we ask Bill how many times a ball went into the outfield, and if it were to stop rolling because it hit a little bit of a hill, if that ever would have mattered to a game, I think he'd be like, no, they.
No. My point is that the current size and configuration of the baseball fields works for baseball now, the way Roberts Field is set up now.
I would debate that, but sure, because
It seems
of
to
the
be.
drainage.
I haven't
and
heard him
everything
say that
else.
it doesn't. No, that's
Yeah.
different though.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
that's for pairs, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know the answer to that question
Yeah,
here. I
Bill's-
didn't measure the existing fields. I was told since day one to use I believe it was a 60-foot baseline
Right.
for the
Right.
fields, because that's what was required in looking at the new
Yeah.
plan.
Right.
And the diamonds are the same size.
And that's a conversation we definitely need to have.
Yeah, I think the diamonds is the key. The diamonds have to be the same.
So, and I'm going to throw a wrench into this. This is a different thing. So after we met last week, I remember you were talking about the lacrosse field, and you said that your house got hit by a ball, right?
Yeah.
And so it kind of passed, but then when I got home, I started thinking about that.
I shouldn't have said that.
You shouldn't have, because then I'm thinking, well, you know what? We've got a lacrosse goal directly in front of the playground,
We do.
and that's 30 some odd shots a game directed at the playground. We'll get to a more discussion later, but we can put up a screen to block the balls.
We already have a fence in the playground theoretically, but and there's trees there, somewhat. Still, but yeah, I don't know. It could be a concern, but I don't know that it's something we can. Yeah.
Well, and then I go back to why did we make the flip? Why did we flip the fields in the first place?
Open space.
We wanted to open the space up.
Well, you didn't want to look at, when you looked at the fields, the idea was that it would appear to be an open field and not have backstops in the middle of it,
Which is what we have now.
Which is what you have now.
Right. So we were trying to, and that was a legitimate concern. I guess where I'm kind of at now is, does that justify the safety risk of having kids pelted with lacrosse balls?
How close
So
would it be?
it's not that close. I mean, I know it looks.
It's close enough. I mean,
And I don't know if somebody didn't do that on purpose. I didn't say it to the guy, but I mean, he went a distance, and I don't think that's normal. They went through trees, like through an opening in the trees, across my street, and hit my house. And I said it jokingly.
It's just
but
more
I don't.
about the-
I wasn't even thinking that happened on a
It's
regular
like
basis.
60 feet from
Yeah,
the
that's a lot,
playground.
right? It's like
Somebody
60 or 70
messes, they're
feet.
really messy. They go 60 feet.
And they have to
Let's
maintain.
use-
Over the fence,
Yeah, 60
and-
feet, and they have to maintain over a 4. How big's the fence going to be around the playground?
They're the
3
I
feet.
think we decided decided yet,
But
yeah.
typical is like a 3 feet, something like that?
4 to 6 feet. I
4
would
feet,
say.
yeah, so they'd have to still be elevated 4 feet after 60 feet shot.
But you could always elevate the fence.
Well,
slightly.
I'll say this, that
Yeah, only in that section. You
Yeah.
could have the fence bigger, that would be a great idea, actually.
Lacrosse's perspective was that we needed to add in, and I'll share their
Oh, you already
thing,
asked me. Okay.
their slide with them, that we needed to add in safety nets, like they have at McCarthy, behind the goal there.
Are they movable? Do they go up and down?
They're on poles, they have pulleys on the top, but they never get raised and lowered. They're just kind of, they have the potential for being raised and lowered, but they're not raised and lowered.
Yep.
So in essence, we wanted to open up the view of the field, but with a 4 to 6 foot fence on the playground and now the safety fence, we've pretty much gone back to where we were. I knew it wouldn't be popular, but
No, it's,
I look at the things and I'm thinking, well, it may just not make sense. And then plus you have to also figure in side throws, right, that are going to be coming off the lacrosse field, going into the parking lot, which won't be as extreme as the goal shots, but it'll be something to consider. Then you factor in all the grading that's going to happen to make that work. It feels like,
So-
to me, that
let me just ask.
flipping for no benefit.
Well, yeah, but you're not flipping for no benefit because there's not enough room to do the same thing with that baseball field up higher unless we really just start over.
Exactly.
Well,
So-
but if baseball's needs are being met by the current configuration, then we just replace the backstops, add nicer dugouts, and call it a day.
And tell lacrosse they don't have a field?
No,
But they get the
keep the
backfield.
lacrosse field where it is, and then that way there's not, you don't have the issue with throws at the playground. If we have concerns about throws going off into the woods, then we could still put a safety screen up. It's not going to affect the view because you're, I guess unless you're on the path, you'll see, but.
Right, so let me just say, the current configuration, the way it is now, if we left it that way and we wanted to add dugouts, we're not expanding the playground. If you think about where one of those fields is, it's pretty close to the playground already. So if you're gonna add dugouts
We're not going to
there,
expand that side of the playground, so we could still expand on the other side.
And you're not doing a
we still
bandstand
expand
either.
on the northern and
Right.
southern
You do a
sides,
bandstand.
right,
but just
so-
not on the third side.
so the bandstand goes away, so certain other things have gone. I'm not sure that it's worth redoing the entire plan because there would need to be, because it's advisable to do screening. If we're legitimately worried about safety and there's no remedy for that, then I can see that that maybe this wouldn't work. But, you start moving those pieces around, the baseball fields and such, there's only so many places you can put it. We do want to expand the playground. We'd like to have that walking path. We already put the walking path if we don't make space
Yeah, and
for
we
it.
also wanted to get some hill for the abutters so that it shielded some of that, which we added in, which isn't there now. There's
What do you say? I'm sorry.
on the left, no, if we went to the playground that's as the playground as it sits now, there's not enough room to add in on the left side of it,
Right.
that more,
I just have a question. I mean, I understand where you're going with this, the safety issues, but I think if you went to any multi-purpose field, you're gonna see the same thing. And the thing is lacrosse is gonna, this is children's lacrosse, correct? That's practicing here. It's not,
Well,
certainly other people could, but certainly other people could be playing catch. with
we could put a
baseball.
restriction on it, right? But I mean, who's going to enforce a restriction and who's to say down the road?
It's who's to say that people that go there and play frisbee at lunch aren't gonna throw it in, you know what I mean? Like, I think there comes a point where we're overthinking some of the concerns related to safety. I have a small child myself, I get it, we go to the playground right next to a baseball field and a softball field, and kids are playing street hockey, and there's a fence around it, I get it, and you're always kind of aware of what's going on, but these were meant to be used together. They were meant to be used by parents who have children who are there to watch lacrosse and baseball. The point wasn't to separate them so much that they were independent of each other. They're supposed to be complementary. So I just want to kind of bring you back there. I understand that there's concerns. I understand that there could be flying balls, but I think you're going to see that in any multi-purpose situation.
Sort of to Katie's point, we ought to be able to test this out. I mean, either physically with players, just to get a feel for, you know, what the throw probability is of, you know, having balls go, or even just, Katie sort of alluded to this too, have, look at some existing layouts that have, this can't be the only kind of situation like this. I'm sure maybe you have some ideas, Katie. We can look at, if we could just see something that's working under the same kind of dimensions and constraints, I think it would give everybody confidence.
Yeah, no, I think that, I mean, even if you went to elementary schools, my niece and nephew both play softball and baseball for middle school and high school, and my daughter's 5, so she's always playing on the playground while my sister's watching them play baseball and softball. They're that close. And so the thought's always there, that there's a ball, there's cars, there's people with all sorts of different things, but they're not far away from each other. So I think that you'll see it a lot more often. And I agree, if this was twice as big and we could separate it out, then
I think if we can alleviate some of the concerns,
concerns.
I think that's what we've got to figure out how to do with it, is just decide.
Well, let's see what the
decide
public
whether-
has to say at the public input session, and then if anybody has, I mean, if there's a safety concern from the community, then we'll address it. But it sounds like the consensus is that you guys don't feel like it's really a
I mean,
issue.
it's a concern. I don't want to say it's not a concern and have a kid get hit by a ball later on, but we do have to weigh the thing. And I actually like the idea of, even if it was only in that one small section of the playground, there was a step down and there was a 2-foot higher fence over that section and it dropped down, then the probability is you would have to throw the ball up in the air and over the fence. It's just not going to happen. And if it does happen, it's not going to be going that fast. We're only worried about the line drive at a kid's head. And so if the fence is tall enough, it just, the possibility of it happening becomes small enough that I don't think we can account for every possible thing.
Okay.
And there is still going to be people walking on the trail at any point, but
Right.
the people know there's a game going on. So we can't help that. I just don't see it. Because you can't put up a net, I don't think, on the lacrosse field, because you put up a net, your pole's going to be sitting in the bandstand,
Well,
almost.
the thing is, like, any kid that's going to be playing in this playground is going to be certainly shorter than 6 feet tall. So if you put a 50-foot section of 6-foot fence rather
And
than
the rest is
4-foot
4.
fence,
Yeah.
Well, lacrosse has asked for the net, so I think if we're going to deny that, then I think we need to discuss it with them. So, and I'll get to that slide.
Okay. I mean, if they want the net and it's, does it have to stay up year round, it's just aesthetically? All right, that's fine.
Somebody has to be responsible for taking it up and putting it down, and I don't know that we're willing to do that, but, you know, we can certainly ask.
Yeah.
Any other,
Were they looking for a place to store their equipment, though? Was that part of the equipment?
I'm sorry.
Wasn't lacrosse looking for a place to store their equipment?
Yes, so
Is
the-
that covered as part of it?
The way that, and I don't know if it'll show in the pictures or not, but the way that the McCarthy field is, it's latched on, and it looks like it's more permanent. It's like it could be taken down, but it's like zip tied to it, so I don't think it's not like an easy thing. The storage for lacrosse is going to, there's 2 options right now. There's shared space with baseball in their dugout, which is attached to the dugout, their dugout storage. Or potentially, if they can't work out and they're talking, if they can't work out a shared space, then it would be in a new storage unit attached to Engine 3, where baseball has their old shed now. And I've put that into the budget just for a budget item.
I have a question
Jim?
about those poles. What interference are they gonna run with a helicopter?
I don't expect, I'll run that by Chief Ryan, but I don't expect, because they're so far off to the left, I wouldn't expect that they would, but
Okay, so
I'll make sure.
The poles would just be on one side, they're not gonna be on both.
We haven't talked about it, but that was my assumption. I don't know that you'd want to protect the other side as well. I think if we did put them on the garage side of the lacrosse field, that would definitely affect access to the field for emergency vehicles around the back of Engine 3 and potentially the med-flight landings. If you put them on both sides, right? Any other comments or questions? We have a lot to talk about. All right. You also, Katie, moved, it looks like you moved the fields and walking trails in the southern portion forward, away from at least those 3 pine trees on the lower southeastern section, right? Or am I just making that up?
Yeah, no, we just shifted it, per your email, we just shifted it up closer to the lower cross field.
So those trees are now in an okay place, not to be lost, that we were talking about last time, the 3 pine trees?
Good.
Any other changes that you had on the plan?
I believe so.
Any other comments or questions, or Jim?
Yeah. What concerns me is it looks like the pathway goes right through the trees, even though there's supposed to be a tree protection zone.
So specifically, I think you're talking about, like, if you look on,
Take a look just south of the new playground. You've got the 2 trees that are existing.
He's got it, no, he's got it zoomed in up there for you.
Oh, okay. You got these 2 trees here that are existing, and the trail goes right through them. But they're supposed to be protected, aren't they?
Actually, you got a worse situation to the south.
Yeah,
You
well-
got it directly in the middle of the tree.
These trees were added in, I know these trees were added in from GPS, they'll be located by survey as part of this, and the trees are meant to be protected, and therefore the path will be shifted. This path
Okay,
is,
that's fine.
yeah, it's not
Let's-
gonna be built exactly where it's.
That was my concern.
Yeah.
But we also have a problem up here, where you've got a good-sized oak tree, and the fence goes right through the center of the oak tree.
yeah, and I think, if I'm wrong, correct me, I think that that's sort of that area is sort of the potential footprint, right? So I'm thinking that when the bid's placed and the design is worked on, that the designer would work to fence off the playground so that it works with the trees and meets all of our guidelines. So I would assume that if, from a design standpoint, if the fence goes right through the tree, that wouldn't be the case, right? That they would make the design change so that it would protect it.
I've done enough construction where, yeah, it doesn't make any sense, but that's what's on the final plans, and that's why I'm bringing this up.
Okay.
This is still a conceptual master plan.
Okay.
This is not the site plan, this is not a construction plan.
And it's in the expectations for the playground that this is sort of the biggest footprint that they would work with, and that it would, depending on where the design nets out, that it would be scaled back. So that would certainly be one of the design considerations, would be to not only protect the trees, but to incorporate the trees into the design so that they're part of the playground. But your point is well made and heard on that. I was looking at that too, figuring how could we even get around that with the fencing and still having it inside. But I think that's part of the design
Still have the
process.
same problem down here.
So that corner, Jim, I think we were looking for some feedback from you on those individual trees, on maybe which ones would,
Sacrifice.
right, which ones wouldn't. But to Katie's point, this is more of a concept at this point.
Okay, as long as it's understood that it's a concept. Like I said, I've got enough construction experience where you look at it, and, oh no, that's gonna be changed, and it wasn't, and that's the final plan. And then I also have a problem down here. I assume that this is gonna be the 4-foot wide walkway.
Oh, I'm sorry, where were you
Right
pointing?
down through here, I see these dotted lines,
Yeah,
and then on the plan, it says ADA compliant.
to be rerouted in field as necessary to protect trees.
And then I looked over at the detail, and it shows that 6 inches of the soil is going to be taken out. And then the soil underneath that is going to be compacted.
So maybe that trail would need to be on the northern side of those trees, so we don't, you know what I mean? So we don't,
Well,
that's where the rerouting comes in.
if that's the case, but right now, this would be a real, you might as well cut those trees down.
So, and, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, that's the existing location of the existing path that's there today.
Right.
Right.
So the idea was requested that area be looked at to make ADA compliant. Again, we have no grades, so we have no idea what it's gonna take to try to make that area ADA
Okay.
compliant. It was just a suggestion of the committee to try to make a forested loop section ADA compliant, and that's what we'll be looking to try to do that in the future.
Because that's a big concern with compacting that soil and then scooping out. You know, what happens if you hit a good-sized root? You
Right.
cut it?
No, we want to protect the trees, right? Chris, did you have a question?
Nope.
Are there any other questions on or comments about that?
Maybe this is what you get for doing such a good job of qualifying the drawing. It's so much more readable than what we had before.
So I did post this this revision on Facebook, and I just want to someone in the community provided this drawing, and I couldn't adequately answer their questions, so I just wanted to share this with you. They wanted to know if we could change the orientation of the fields so that they're facing out towards the forest, and I know that. Go ahead.
It defeated the purpose of opening the field. That's why we weren't looking at doing that, because we didn't want the fencing in the middle of the open field, was our reasoning behind why we wanted it facing the way we did.
Okay.
We wanted to push the fencing as far back as possible so that when you looked at the park, it looked open.
Okay.
That
And
was.
and wasn't there a concern about the orientation of the fields too, and the players' eyes in
I
the
think the
sun?
one on
and-
the left probably they would be facing,
There would be,
to
yeah,
some extent, into the
when you're
setting
looking
sun.
for the ball and you're in the field. I think it'd be the one on the, well, it depends on the time of the day, really,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Gonna be the one on the right.
yeah.
All right, so you're saying, I guess what I'm hearing is that this
We have
would
to ask
work.
Bill, but I think there was a lot of reasons why we went the other way.
If our goal was to open up the view, this would not
This
fit
would
within
not do
that
that.
consideration.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments about that? David?
If you did go to that, you would concentrate a lot of the activity in the park, from the left to the center, right? You'd have everyone playing ball, you'd have
Yeah.
the playground, the pavilions.
Everything would be coming for right
these
reasons.
It's a good point. It would focus all of the energy and noise of the
Yeah.
activity in that area. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other comments, questions? So since our last meeting, I did add in, Sorry,
I've
Jim.
got one more thing. That berm that's going to be constructed, I'm concerned again about that. How wide was the berm going to be at the top?
So it was just planned, I believe I planned on 6 feet at the top.
6 feet, so. And what kind of trees were you going to use?
Thula green arborvitae.
We haven't
Okay,
decided, and I wouldn't choose an arborvitae necessarily.
Question on tree. Is it a real tree or is it something that's green and perennial?
It's gonna need to be, so I would suggest, because it's purposes for screening, it would need to be something that would be evergreen. It would be there year-round, and it would grow densely together so that it would block the neighbor's view and help with noise on top of that berm.
And just to clarify, Weston recommended the green Thula. If that's not the correct one, then green Thula arborvitae. It's supposedly, what Weston told me was that it was a deer-resistant arborvitae. And that was the budget number that we used to.
That might be appropriate, I just think arborvitaes are overused, and, other people would say other things, but it would serve the same purpose, right? It would grow thickly together over time, it would have some height to it, 6 feet.
And the point of it may not be the right exact thing, but the point was that we were able to put a budget number together, and I think with that number, then we could, if we wanted to adjust it, we would.
Okay. Just, how long do you expect them to survive spaced 3.5 feet on center in their trees?
They do, I've seen them grow into beautiful screens at 3.5 feet on center and stay green for, I've seen them 30 feet tall, it's crazy.
Yeah, and I've seen them also,
Yep,
not so much.
Yeah, but same with any plant.
Which brings up my
But at
next
least for
point.
our
Why not a
purposes,
fence?
wait, Jim, please, at least for our purposes, just to get a budget and to get an
Okay,
idea,
all right.
we've got a screen in place that provides sound and visual mitigation, right? And we've got a budget number that will get us started down the road of creating a visual block.
Then my thought is, why not look at a fence?
We had the discussion about fences, and we did not want to go down that path.
Okay, but, putting this berm in, and then you're Your plants, you're gonna need, what, about over 100 of them. And,
Yeah, let me just say that we talked about the fence, and I think the consensus was that we didn't want to look at
Okay.
fences.
But the thought part of the fences was the trees too, like this.
I'm sorry?
I don't remember why.
I don't remember what the discussion
Yeah,
was
we'd have to
around,
go
but I
back
know
and
that we
look
did
at
talk
Back to the
about
minutes.
fences.
Yeah, we'll go
Yeah.
back to the minutes.
And it was
But
a
it's also
consensus.
our butters and providing something
Yeah, we-
nicer for them to look at, that's not just a big,
David, you're also gonna get more height off of the berm, and the plants, you're gonna get more height off
They
of them.
survive.
It's certainly gonna absorb more sound, and I think it's nice to look, I think it's nice to look at something green in front.
So any more comments or questions about the berms? Okay. So since the last time we met, I did add in a few more things. I increased the the playground structure budget based on the bid information that we got. So I increased that from 381 to 442 to allow for the ramps, right? And then base it specifically on what that bid number came back in as. So it's a more concrete number. And then also the changing the pathway budget item inside the playground from permeable dust basically to the poured in place stuff. So that was a significant increase because that poured in place rubber stuff is expensive. And then there it is. So it's 600 linear feet of pathways, and that alone, just the pathways alone, raised it by $24,000 to $32,000. I mentioned that I spoke to Chelmsford Youth Lacrosse about the safety net. There's the actual safety net at McCarthy, and you can see how there's kind of a pulley on top and sort of what the screening looks like. And I've asked Steve for a cost estimate for that, so that needs to be added into the plan. And then replacing the old shed that's there on site now behind Engine 3 for lacrosse. They may work it out with baseball that they could share the space, the dugout space, storage space. And we won't need to add that, but at least for the time being, that's in the plan. And then we added, there's 4 new tree plantings in here, so Jim provided some varieties that might work well for this, and then I got some cost for those from Weston Nurseries and added that in. And they were roughly $300 a piece, so that increased the budget. So we now have a $1 million budget. Majority of the budget is spent on the playground, 43%, but we have other things going on here too. Other big ticket items obviously are the pavilions, the athletic fields, the pond dredging is a big.
I was just going to ask. It's still in there, right?
Yes, and I'll have a response from Corey Rose about that that we can discuss as well. But so that's $130,000 as well. So we're $1 million now.
Yeah.
If we have questions about budget detail, I've included this. We have the detail here if there's anything that you guys wanted to discuss. I didn't think there necessarily was, but it's available if you guys want to talk about it, anything. Any questions about budgeting or the budget or detail? No? David?
My only observation with the dredging, when I did see the number, is I've seen that pond go completely dry 3 times now.
Right.
So that could be a line item hold for the future. It's
Correct.
For it to go dry.
Yeah.
And I think the 100, Steve said that the expectation was that the dredging would likely occur when the pond was dry, that would lower the cost.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's consistent with where they're thinking of it as well. But it's still in the budget, so these are all the individual budget details. So additional planning information. Katie, if you could, these were the 3 things that I had asked for. You've already kind of covered off on the average width, but regards to where we stand on the 18.5 that we started out with for the project cost update, and then I'd ask you about the cost of doing architectural renderings to kind of give people a better feel for, a ground level view of what the enhancements are going to look like.
So regarding our costs, I pulled numbers together today, and we're at just about $18,200 of the $20,000 budget. So we have minimal funds left.
Okay, so
Been floating a lot of these meetings just to make sure that I'm available, but
how does that usually work? Like if would we, I guess, would we normally go to the town manager and say, listen, we're going to be over, so we need X amount more?
Our contract is with the town of Chelmsford, so yes.
Okay.
So we need to kind of get a handle on where we're at in the process, how much we need to finish the process, what you need, what you need me for. Certainly, I'm willing to donate some time. I'm donating some meeting time just so that I can be available to the group. I think it helps with planning when I'm able to be here. So I would certainly speak to Paul. Maybe by the end of tonight we'll have an idea as to how many more meetings we'll need.
We absolutely will.
And how much the plan may change between now and then. And certainly I think we have minimal steps to do that. So we can be as efficient as possible and try to put that number together.
So as an action item, can you provide a recommendation for how much more you think it would cost tomorrow or the next day that I can provide to Paul and ask for the additional funding?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Regarding the architectural rendering, so usually I went out to one of my landscape architects that I typically use. The architectural renderings are typical artist renderings that are usually, as it says here, they're architectural, they're buildings. I wasn't exactly sure, and I know you said the improvements. I wasn't exactly sure in telling somebody what they would need to do. Would be something like, would they be providing pictures with a digital image kind of superimposed? What angles would you be looking for? It was kind of too wide open as far as what we would need to do. I know that the playground, the interior of the playground itself, we haven't, and if we're not tasked to figure out what kind of equipment would be in there. So certainly there'd be a fence in that area. We're looking at some of these shade structures or pavilions that would be.
Yes.
there.
So.
And where would the view shed be from specifically?
Okay. So to let you know where this originated from. So someone gave me the comment that this would be helpful to have the renderings to be able to present to the Board of Selectmen or to at least town meeting to say, this is what these things are going to look like. The way that I took that as is that the view shed would be of potentially a person sitting in the audience watching a community band performance, or a person sitting or watching a baseball game to see the new dugouts and backstops, or a person watching a lacrosse game. That was kind of how I heard it. But I don't know if you guys agree that would be useful, and that's why I sort of asked for the cost of it to see, from a cost analysis standpoint, if you guys felt like we should be pursuing that.
That worries me. Even being, if we put a picture down and you have to put the majority of this budget is going to the playground, we don't know what the playground equipment is going to look like. If you pick something that we just rendering that's going to be in the playground that isn't going to be in the playground, we're going to get people that like it and people that don't like it, and they're going to complain about it or support it, but that's not actually what's being built. So I think the lacrosse field and the baseball field, we can do an accurate representation of what we want to do. We can't for the playground because we don't know what the equipment is.
Correct.
So I worry because that's the majority of the budget. And if it's not in there,
So what I'm hearing you say is that despite whatever the price, it's not worth it.
I think it's going to cause us a lot of additional potential questions that we can't answer.
Okay, so no matter how you guys feel.
I think there's too much uncertainty. Like, we
I
don't know
agree.
exactly.
No, Chris, to your point, we don't know what the pavilion's going to look like, so that would be an assumption. We don't know exactly what the dugouts are going to look like, so that would be an assumption as well. So there's a lot of assumptions, and people take, as Bible, what's there on the paper. They will react to that, and will spend a lot of energy on those designs.
Yep.
Where those aren't actually the designs.
Okay, so we'll pass.
My only comment as an alternative, you guys have done a great job putting together example pictures of what you're envisioning, and you're not settling on one pavilion. When you speak to the selectmen, it might be worthwhile to say, in this area we call it a pavilion. These are some of the examples we discussed at the master plan as far as what we were thinking. It doesn't stick you on one pavilion, but it at least gives the audience an idea of the usefulness of the structure.
Yep.
And gives them an idea, and it's something that you guys have already done a great job of, showing examples of, the types of structures are going to be around the porta potties, the types of shade structures. You don't have to show the playgrounds at all, but things like like the dugouts, there were pictures, beautiful pictures of different dugouts. That might be something that's more beneficial, just to kind of get the point across.
Okay, we'll do that. So if you guys wouldn't mind going through the past presentations, and if there's any photographs or images that are there that you feel like need to be added into the, and I can add those back in, and that way we'll save the money on, and that kind of solves that issue. Thank you for. So Steve's not here, so I'll go ahead but I had sent him this information and he responded to it. So what we were looking for from him were comments generally about maintenance. So we shared with Steve and with Gary Persichetti and Kathleen Canavan the survey results from our user surveys, the survey results from an open space survey that I'll share with you guys in a minute, and also just general comments and stuff that we've gotten along the way. And a lot of those issues deal with like what was said earlier about maintenance being an issue at the field. So I know they were talking about working on some sort of a plan and response, so that's what that was about. We're also looking for what the overall effect on drainage would be, and that question came up earlier. With all the grading that we're talking about, where that water is going to go and how it's going to affect, and I don't know where that stands. And then I was going to ask for, and I'll ask Steve by email tomorrow for a few new cost estimates, and then a second look at all the budget items, because I'd say 95% of the costs that are in the budget have kind of come from him. So I just want to make sure that they all are kosher, that everything matches up with what it's supposed to.
I
Yes.
just want to, just quickly regarding drainage, I know that there's a lot of concern about drainage. I know we talked briefly about regrading some of the areas, but as far as an overall effect of drainage based on the master plan that we've come up with, certainly we've created some additional impervious surfaces or compacted surfaces with the walkway that goes all the way around. The baseball diamonds are being replaced, so I think we're going from 3 to 2, so there's some compacted, non-vegetated areas there. There's a couple of shade structures that we're providing. All of these things will create more runoff, but there's no more rainwater that's going to fall on the site that falls there today. So the water that falls there today either sinks into the ground or pretty much runs off to the side of the site. It's going to continue to do that. Certainly there could be a slight increase in runoff due to the increase in impervious and compacted areas. But there's no need to create, all of these surfaces are not creating new dirty surfaces. So we're creating a little bit more parking potentially in the parking lot, which is creating, additional paved surfaces where vehicles could be parked. But the main body of the park we're not going to create any kind of drainage problems. And I think certainly a majority of it would drain towards the
Right, and I just need that perspective to actually put in the master
In the
plans.
writing,
Right, so
okay.
I just need a paragraph that says exactly
Okay.
that. That's kind of what,
Okay, yeah, I can help with that.
Jim, do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a comment on it depends on the bulk density that you compact the soil to. Now, going by what the DPW did behind behind here, when they put in that ball field, they over-compacted it, which gives you more runoff. It depends on how much compaction is going to happen. And that new ball field is more compacted than the old ones. And that was simply because of the way DPW compacted the soil. They had a guy out there on a pavement roller, back and forth, probably spent most of the day.
So Jim, are you suggesting that we should have something in the plan putting together now that talks about not?
I think what we can do is just address that in the verbiage that goes into the overall impact on drainage. I think we can get there with that. I also wanted Steve just to take a look at the community bandstand and portable bathroom facility costs. Make sure that the interior lighting for both the bandstands and the concrete footers were in there. Hi, Amanda.
I'm sorry, I don't remember interior lighting being discussed in previous committee meetings for those bandstands. Perhaps I missed it. Would you
Yep.
please elaborate on what you have in mind to propose?
Minimally, it was for them to pack up, was the thinking.
It was to give it was interior only, not to be broadcast out into the field, and it was to allow them to pack their materials up.
So it wasn't to perform after dusk. It was the goal was just, the show would end at dusk, and they would still be there. So they needed to pack their equipment, so there needed to be some visibility for them for safety to get out of that area was the thinking.
And then just to give the total budget a once over. Steve did respond to the committee today with this information, and I'll just read it into the record. There was a request to change the material of the perimeter walking fitness trail to a stone, dust, gravel, or other permeable surface and be 4 feet wide. Our opinion is that the 6 feet wide should be the width. That will allow people to be side by side, either jogging or walking with strollers, etc. Also, a gravel or stone dust type surface would require much more maintenance than a paved surface. Heavy use will consistently loosen the top of the stone dust gravel and create areas that will rut, become unstable, or wash out, causing a hazard and relatively quick attention to keep it safe and usable. And then just as an aside, Katie, you said that you would talk to Steve, I guess, and come back with a sort of a maintenance overview of the crusher fines.
Yeah.
I learned a new name tonight.
Yeah, no, we can certainly talk about that.
Great. His second bullet point was there seems to suddenly be concern about why the need for 2 baseball fields and why can't other locations be used. I was given a list of fields at South Row, Center, Westlands, Byam, and the Parker schools. South Row does not have a baseball field and is all used for soccer. Center has a very small field that was paid for about 10 years ago by the PTO at the time, mainly for school use, gym recess, and is not large enough to support youth baseball. Westlands has 2 small fields, one is not used and one is used by youth softball for practice. We have had discussions this spring with softball about doing work to the one field that is used. Again, this location is not large enough to accommodate youth baseball. Byam had a field in the lower area, but the modular classroom project eliminates that as a usable space. Parker has an underutilized baseball field, but we have had initial discussions with youth baseball about making that the pony-size field 50-70, which I think refers to the outfield sizes. It is the intent of the town and youth baseball to maintain 2 baseball fields at Roberts. Any questions or comments about that? Okay. So I also received an email from, I emailed the town manager about getting on the Board of Selectmen's agenda for July 31st, and then also asked for his feedback on funding scenarios as well as just general help in organizing the material so that it comes across well. Specifically, he said that we are on the agenda for the 31st, so that's taken care of. And he said specifically that the $1 million total would need to be funded over multiple fiscal years. So the one shot at fall town meeting is now off the table, according to this. So I'll need to update the plan with that, which the reason was that he said is that the Community Preservations Fund has a balance of approximately $1 million. However, there are other expected requests for use of these funds. The fund's debt service level does not facilitate a borrowing for the requested funding level. So reading beyond that, I think what I'm hearing is that if it's not going to be a one shot, it's going to be piecemeal in some sense. So I think we then have to prioritize or create a prioritized list of what goes first, what goes, how do we break this up? How do we make this into fundable chunks?
It's pretty obvious that the playground
Yeah, it's tough.
has to be torn down, right? I mean,
Yeah, the playground has to go first, but the playground kind of butts into the current baseball.
I don't know that we necessarily have
Yeah.
to define the priorities tonight, but I
Okay.
think that we have to, I think we need to gather some information from the public next Tuesday. I think there's some stuff that we can talk about of ways that we can gather some more information from the community about their ideas of priorities. But I think ultimately when we make the presentation to the Board of Selectmen, we're going to have to create a presentation that has priorities, that's chunked up in some sense. and then he just made the suggestion that we summarize up front and push the other stuff in the back. And the town manager would be at the public input session next Tuesday. It was good timing. Okay. I also heard from the Chelmsford Water District. I'm gonna have to move closer because this stuff is small. They reached out to me. They had not been contacted yet specifically about the bubblers or the gardens or anything. I'll just read it directly. In regards to our conversation regarding the proposal and the inclusion of water bubblers in it, I would have to relay that the Chelmsford Water District would be opposed to this for the following reasons. The health and safety of the water at these sites would then become the liability of the district, and with outdoor bubblers such as this, that is an impossible situation. The issue of backflow, number two, the issue of backflow prevention becomes an issue in these sorts of situations as well. These need to be inspected and more often than not repaired on an annual or biannual schedule. They could not be placed without these devices by law, and so there really isn't a way to avoid these issues. Number three, you wouldn't have to have a meter unit set up to account for any usage, most likely a pit meter set up, which can have similar issues as backflow devices. And then the fourth reason was the distances that the lines would have to be run would not be conducive to healthy or pleasant tasting water. And I had mentioned to him that we were proposing a bubbler in both of the bandstand or both of the pavilions, and that water would run from the garage to the community bandstand on the opposite field. So he said, I believe you mentioned in one instance the bubbler would be to the back of the project, which could be 1,000 feet or more. Water sitting for long periods of time have a tendency to create off flavors, be a risk for development of bacterial issues, and specifically, I would be concerned for the production of disinfection byproducts at levels that could pose a health risk.
Okay.
So
That's it.
I don't remember how we even ended up on it. I think it might have been a double I'd scrap it.
bubblers are off the plan.
Bubbles off, yeah. Don't
He
even remember how we
was
got
really
on.
excited about the idea of cooperating with maybe the future board, or at least with people that take on the garden projects, and working with them to develop, plant list or rain gardens or swale gardens, and to sort of have a seat at that table when those discussions are happening. I don't know if that necessarily would be part of what we're going to be doing, but maybe if the advisory board comes up later, that would be something that they would sort of coordinate with. But do you guys like the idea of having the water district involved in those conversations, those communications and stuff?
I don't have any opposition to it.
Okay, so I'll add into the expectations on the natural slide that they would have a seat at the table, and then follow up with the commissioners to make sure that that's something they want to do. Good. Any questions or comments about that? I wanted to share, so the Chelmsford Open Space and Recreational Facilities Master Plan is being updated, and they just conducted a survey that I happened to work on, and I wanted to share the results with you. So in these few pages, this is going to be anytime Roberts Field was mentioned or anytime the playground was mentioned. The first question was, where Roberts Field appeared, was which open spaces do you regularly visit? And it was a little bit surprising to me, but Roberts Field was fourth on the list. So I think that's important for us, because when we go to a town meeting and say we want $1 million for the park, it's a valued piece of recreational facilities in town. It's the fourth. Was the fourth highest referenced open space in town, even higher than Freeman Lake, where Varney Park is. So I think there's some learning in there. The other times that playgrounds or Roberts Field came up were in comments, open-ended questions, where how can Chelmsford improve its open spaces or recreational facilities? And do you have any other comments, questions, or suggestions? These are the comments that came back that mentioned how can you improve your open spaces and recreational facilities? And this is in the chronological order that they were received, so it's just kind of how they came in. Better maintenance, and once again, this is something that we're hearing a lot of in all the surveys. Routine, regular maintenance is profoundly and extremely lacking in all playgrounds. The only time the field's mowed appears to be during baseball seasons, and then people saying they want bathrooms in Roberts Field. People in support of the Roberts Field improvement would be great. Stop changing the current look and feel of open spaces. Roberts Field has natural forest with tree buffer between the neighborhoods. More options, improve Roberts Field playground, and help fund Roberts Field renovation. The second page of comments, take better care of the open spaces. The grass is often dead and full of weeds, and structures are not well maintained. Also, better drainage at Roberts Field. And I took that to mean the baseball fields.
Just in general. Just in general, it's not good.
Yeah, I
drainage,
guess,
right?
maybe
Because,
so.
I mean, it's-
Playground remodel at Friendship Park. So again, people are looking for this to happen and expecting it. Leave Roberts Field alone, reduce the ball fields to one regulation Little League field with nice dugouts and one soccer lacrosse field. Replace the playground within the same footprint, no need to expand it. Leave the wooded area, pond area, and the rest of the open space alone. Roberts Field should get fixed up ASAP. I feel that updates to Roberts Field playground should be done in the fall to lessen the impact of park downtime during summer months when kids are out of school. Please leave Roberts Field set up the way it is. Replace the playground, repair the ball fields and soccer fields, and leave the rest alone. That was all the comments about Roberts Field. Any questions? And I think this isn't anything new to us, but I think it's supportive of what we already know. In regards to comments about playground, people said they wanted better toddler playgrounds, more playgrounds, family-friendly activities, better playgrounds, better and safer playgrounds for children, new and more advanced playgrounds for children, bigger playgrounds with more parking. And I think this is very consistent with what we heard in our user survey. But I think there's a real demand for the type of playground that we've at least budgeted for. Any questions, comments? I just quickly wanted to, because next Tuesday we're going to be at a public input session and we're going to hear a lot of comments and questions, and I just wanted to sort of go back to what we heard in the original survey so that we're sort of prepared for the kinds of things that we might see. Just to touch on this, this is the open-ended comments that were in the original park user survey from January 2016. The underlined sections represent multiple comments that sort of reflected the same feeling. People wanted to see us maintain the neighborhood community feel, support the corner store, make it unique and non-duplicative, update the playground, not like to see the bathroom facilities, cleaning and maintenance issues with misuse issues. Bathrooms are a must, so there was that whole thing we talked about being some want it, some don't want it. The issue of driving too many non-residents or just overall usage to the park. Planting more trees for shade or just creating shade opportunities to Jim's earlier presentation. Whatever we do, trying to make it self-sustaining and require minimal maintenance. People wanted to see lights for late afternoon, early evening walks and play sports. Definitely needed more parking, definitely didn't want to see more parking. Again, poorly maintained, wanted to see a wide open green space. Questions about who's going to pay for stuff, specific recommendations for the athletic fields, and then specific recommendations about keeping it a natural, peaceful place. Any questions or comments? These were the specific questions and comments that were made at the last public input session, right? So this is, I went through the video, and this is all the things that were asked or said. People wanted to know how it's going to be paid for. People wanted to know if we were going to address maintenance needs, wanted to know if it would include budget and staffing. And I've tried to, in putting this together and sort of going through this process, answer all of these questions. So if we haven't answered these questions, I think we need to before next Tuesday. What are the boundaries of the project? Is there a plot plan? Have you gotten town feedback about traffic and maintenance, trash pickup, mowing, police reports? How's it going to affect abutters, drainage, parking, and noise? Will the wildlife-friendly habitat continue? How are we going to talk about expected usage increases for features? What types of playground equipment are we going to talk about? And has there been any input from town sports who used Roberts Field? Any questions or comments about those? Some additional planning, I mentioned this earlier, I reached out to Christina Whittlesley, who is the Fine Arts Coordinator at the Chelmsford Public Schools, and this was her specific response, asking her if any of her department or teachers would be interested in hosting events at the larger bandstand. And she had said that this sounds like an interesting opportunity, and that she would share the information with the ensemble and theater directors to see if any of them would think that the space would be appropriate for their needs in the late spring or summer. And Amanda, I know you had a comment about that earlier. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
Right, she's going to go and poll her colleagues. What then? What are you going to do with that information?
Well, if I get it before we present the plan to the Board of Selectmen, I'll provide that to them and let them know that the Chelmsford Public Schools at least have an interest in utilizing the bandstand as a performance area.
So do you envision that their needs would also impact the design, utilities, function of these bandstand structures? Are you going to have to add lights for their theater productions?
No, I don't think that would be something we could, I mean, we talk about
I
that.
wouldn't want to.
No,
I think-
it's a dawn till dusk park.
Yeah,
And-
yeah, without any theater, like you mean actual theatrical lights, not necessarily like spotlights. I think, are you doing this you're looking for more justification to the cost? Is what you're-
Partially, but I want to see if there's other groups or people in the community that would be interested in utilizing the larger structure or the other smaller structure when
Before we-
it's not being used.
Yep.
Right. We're just trying to bring more people in from the community into this planning process, I think.
Bill, we want to be very careful here in setting expectations if we really don't have plans for this to be used for evening events.
Right.
Correct, and I was clear with
Evening
that.
events does sort of imply after dark.
Yeah, so that would have to be clarified.
Yeah,
Reaching out to theater directors.
And what's that?
Similar theme, reaching out to theater directors. That implies a certain type of usage and support that was not part of the function that we've discussed for those bandstand structures.
yeah,
Well, it could be, my thought was that they could be held during the day, right?
So it's possible they would have some interest, maybe if their orchestra wants to do a fundraiser and play. I mean, they have a beautiful performing arts center, and they like to perform in there.
Right.
Perhaps there's something they'd like to do out in the community as more of a community concert. I don't really know, but I do think we need to be very specific. This is not set up as a theatrical venue. It's not to be used as a theatrical venue.
Why would it not be used as a?
Well, you need a lot of power, you need a lot of structure for lights if you're going to set it up as a theatrical, even if it's during the day.
Like a Shakespeare in the Park kind of a thing? Is that even?
Yeah, even
still
during
need
the day,
speakers,
you
so-
have, right,
yeah.
even during the, yes, if you were doing a play out there, if you were doing something, you would have amplified sound.
Yeah.
You would have a lot of power that needs to go to that pavilion, and you would need to put up theatrical lights, even during the day, because all productions are lighted.
Okay.
So I think that would probably conflict with how we're using, and I would be concerned for our abutters that this would be a use that, this goes well beyond 6 weeks of a Tuesday night or Thursday, whatever band concert. So we just have to be very specific with them about what.
Well, do we want to put into the master plan then that our expectations are that this would not be used as a theatrical venue?
Yeah.
Is that what the consensus
Well,
is?
or just that this is proposed as a dusk to dawn facility with no additional amplification or
But
anything else. Like
the bands-
as stands, like because the band isn't gonna plug anything in.
Yeah, no, they do. They have an amplified.
Do they?
Yeah.
I thought they just played. Like they have instruments. What do they
No,
amplify?
they amplify that's what David said, that they use
They balance
amplified
it.
I
speakers.
didn't even realize they use speakers. I thought they just played.
The Chelmsford band?
Yes.
They do audio mixing, they just balance it. I thought.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I never.
Well, that's what I understood from what
Oh,
he
I
said.
don't remember hearing anything
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, I don't think that
But
came up.
it's not amplified to project huge sound, I think was what he was saying. It was more for mixing.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I think that his point was that it was more for mixing, balancing the sound, not for making it,
But it's still amplified. I mean, there's
Yeah.
still, so,
yeah.
Yeah, but we didn't give him any power. I mean, we were running a 120 volt line over there to run a couple of lights in case of, so they could pack up. We didn't specify we were gonna give them any
So what
Mask them
expectations
of
would
the
you want
power.
to include on?
Well, though I'm asking if we're even meeting his expectations.
Right.
That's,
So do there need to be outlets, for instance? We haven't really
I
talked
don't-
about specifics
I don't-
of
We haven't talked
electricity.
about specific, nor have we even talked about whether or not we want to even do the bandstand piece. I think we do want a larger pavilion, but are we even talking about even making it big enough for them to
well, he
to do
showed
their
up
piece?
last week and we kind of,
We haven't voted.
we haven't voted definitely.
We haven't voted definitely on some of these things, and that's one of them that we should probably vote on at some point, whether or not we even want to keep it or get
I
rid of
think
it.
it's after the public input when we see how the public
So,
receives.
we'll get into it in a minute, but I think what we should do is gather the public input, incorporate the feedback, look at the plan, and then have a final vote. And we can do a final vote on individual components, or we can do a final vote on the entire thing. Whatever the will of the committee is, we can do
Well,
that.
we should probably vote on individual things. That way it makes it easier for us to come up with the whole plan of
Okay.
what we've kind of gone forward with. We've come
Yeah.
up with a lot of ideas. We've also eliminated a lot of ideas already. I think we just need to finalize on the last few details of
All right,
what.
so that's in the plan, and we'll get to that in a minute.
And I totally agree. I have a hard time voting for something until I hear from public input, and basically we're now presenting this to the public. And then the public can come back and say, you know what, that was a great idea, but we don't want it as, what have you. So if they have objections to things, then we can certainly discuss them. Again, we're a committee that's making recommendations. And even though we go forward with whatever we go forward with, ultimately the town can overdo whatever we say. We're just a committee that's making recommendations and putting down specifics of what we're trying to have them with guidelines. But ultimately, they can take all of those guidelines and throw them all away. They really can.
Sure.
So, but again,
I don't expect that they would. I mean, they.
I would
think
expect it- I
they're
would-
bought into this process, so.
I agree, but understand, even if we came up with, again, if we decided to put splash pads there, which we already voted down, the town can come back and say, nope, no splash pads, doesn't matter what you guys decided. I'm just using that as an example. So I'm just stating.
Okay.
Back to the band, okay.
So going back to the original question, do you want to add an expectation that about not including amplified music or theatrical productions for use in the bandstand?
Could you set like a noise level, like a limit as to because I think you were gonna do a noise level.
But then who's going to enforce it and monitor it? I mean, you open up a hole that can't.
I mean, honestly, I think the limiting factor is what we provide for power to them.
There was
I was
a,
gonna say, that's your most basic.
So we're providing a
And you gotta
bandstand with
provide
minimal
outlets.
power.
And
But you're
it's a
doing that
safety
because you want to limit a certain thing, right? So,
Yes.
so what do you want to limit? Do you want to limit theatrical productions and amplified music?
See, I hate to be that specific in that. It's amplified music really, and it's amplified sound to a large level, when you need to bring in a lot of equipment to do it. But if a high school group wants to put on a play for 20 people on a stage outside, I don't think anybody's gonna say, no, you can't do that. That's actually a nice little thing, but it's the idea that we're gonna bring a production in and bring equipment in that's gonna require 240 volts and all this other stuff. We're not providing that power to the stage. So unless they bring in their own generators, which we don't want either, you can't do it. So I think we just say we're building this for the idea of doing small community events and band events with minimal amplification, or something like that, if you have to put it in there. I don't think you strike out theater or strike out anything. It has to end at dusk, and it shouldn't be overly amplified or adding a lot of extra sound beyond the equipment.
Just to add to that, my thoughts are that we are creating a picnic pavilion
It could be.
that could be used as a bandstand. And that's the assumption I'm going on.
Yep.
So if they need something more than that, then that's not really what I was understood it, but
And I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to get everyone's expectations on the same page, right? So I think we're moving in that direction, right?
yeah, I mean, I'm not in favor of adding extra power so that they could amplify, I mean, I'm not a neighbor that's close by, but I would not be in favor of that as a neighbor, I can tell you that.
They did provide a lot of documentation last meeting about the actual noise level that they produce, right?
Well, they put a
There were a
guesstimate.
couple of,
He put the,
No,
he
they
put
really
all,
wasn't, they
no.
really don't have it, but we will have it.
or there was a discussion at least.
Yeah, but that
we
was
will
all your
determine.
research.
Yeah.
They-
General discussion about noise levels.
Yeah.
And that they would be trying to measure in July, not during the parade or the big town fair,
Right.
but at a regular concert that they have, so we could get an idea of sound levels. I really have to say, I did not know that they amplified at all, but I'm not in favor of adding outlets and extra power out there. I don't want kids sitting in there charging their phones. I just don't want, I
Right.
don't want that used for,
Yeah.
yeah, I think the answer, this is a basic pavilion. Yes, we'd love to have the band use it. We've sized it so that it's appropriate for the band to use because they need a more appropriate place to perform. But I think that's the limit of what we're doing here.
And providing some lighting, safety lighting?
Well, the safety lighting, yeah. I mean, that's a light, a couple of light bulbs, but it's not, full on plug-in power for their application.
That's a question.
I think one thing they will need, and it's almost a safety issue, is a public address system. You have to be able to make announcements and introduce the band, ask for donations, little Jimmy is looking for his parents, that sort of stuff I think will need to be available.
So you think the town should be providing the public address system for the?
No,
they
there
have
has to be power, we have to assume that that's going to be needed. Not amplified music, but they will have to be able to make announcements to a crowd of, 200 people.
If they had to, they could do that, but. Right, you're up. But I think if we could get the question answered, and it's not gonna happen, but just from the band, what the level of amplification is, so we can get it on the record, because I really think that might have happened in a side conversation you had, because nobody on the committee remembers. things saying that.
So what's gonna happen is I went and I took some measurements for,
No, but I don't care about the sound level as much. I care about the power needs.
all right, so do you want the question to be,
What do you plug in? When you perform on these Tuesday nights, what do you plug in? Like you said, I agree, they probably plug in a mic so they can talk to people. Okay?
Okay.
But what else do you plug in? And is that like one outlet that can be locked up on the side of the thing that they have a key for, that they can go and open up at night when they need to use it and plug in 2 plugs and go? Or are they looking for 7 outlets that they need to plug in stuff?
okay,
Because we haven't spec'd any of that in, and we weren't planning on running that much power over there. We were running the power for them off of the same power that we were running the security camera. That was what we were running across the field. Power.
Their lights is gonna require a few.
Yeah, but we hadn't,
Kilowatts.
it may take an extra while, but we hadn't talked about much power.
okay, so maybe there's not an answer to this, but I'm just gonna go back to it anyway. Is there an expectation that we want to put on the use of the bandstand? Not, what?
Let's wait till the public says what they think of the bandstand's gonna be used for, I think, honestly. I think we know we don't want to use it excessively, but we don't know what the lower limit is yet until we hear whether the public even wants a bandstand when we tell them at the meeting.
Yeah, I know at your first public input, that was certainly not on the table. So now it's on the table because we're discussing it, so I'd be very interested to see what the public input is on that.
Okay.
And I would also encourage the people watching on TV, if you're in favor of the bandstand, you should show up next week, because the people that are against it are gonna show up, so.
Exactly.
David?
I certainly think a lot of public commentary will happen around this topic, for
Yep.
sure. I keep hearing the word bandstand.
Yeah,
On the plan and what we've discussed before was a multi-use pavilion.
it is.
Correct,
Yes.
and that was my point.
So I
That was
think
my
it's a
point.
question of also setting expectations.
Okay. Yeah, and I keep saying bandstand, but I mean, it's a multi-use pavilion, yes, I am terminology's wrong.
I guess I'm just trying to find in my mind, we've allocated almost $100,000 to build it, right? And it could just be a 12 by 12 structure with 2 picnic tables if it was a picnic pavilion. But we've taken it to this next level, and if we build it, there's a good chance that people are going to want to use it. So,
But again, if we're running, as to his point, if we're running a whole bunch of power over there, I don't know
Right.
that I'm in favor of that, then we would shrink it down to the smaller, 2 picnic table, and sorry.
Right. Okay, so I'll ask the community band for their input on power needs. Is there anything else, information-wise, you guys need from them?
Can they discuss a little more their amplification,
Yeah.
so that we can understand that?
And when you, what do you mean by that, like the size of the amps or something? I don't know anything about
Well,
music.
if they can just talk about, I mean, I don't know enough to know, I don't know what I don't know about amplifications. I know nothing about what they do. You know, do they have 2 amplifiers? Do they have 4 amplifiers? How is it really just for mixing, and their intent is to keep the sound level essentially the same, just better mixed, so they're not really jacking up the sound level? Or, you know, again, I'm not an expert in that, so I don't know what to ask for, but we need more information than we have.
But at the very minute, it sounds like number of amps is something that we are.
Number of amps and maybe the power of the amps.
Okay.
You know, whether they're 100 watt or 500 watt amps, or whatever, you know.
Sounds good.
Wattage. I'm sorry, Amanda, you had a question or comment?
Continue to reach out to the schools for their usage. It would be helpful to understand the frequency that they anticipate using the structure for.
Sure. And, you know, there's other potential users as well. There's other small bands, community bands and stuff that could use it as well. So, just so we know. Any other questions or comments about this slide? This, we mentioned earlier, you weren't here, Bill, but after the meeting, Chris had mentioned that his house got hit with a lacrosse ball. So it struck me that we've got a lacrosse goal directly across from the playground. And so I specifically asked Jim Dalton what his thoughts were, if he had any safety issues with that. This was his response: giving it to the kids, the shots are not very hard. At the same time, with the goal that faces the playground, we should really have a screen like they have at McCarthy track for lacrosse and soccer balls. And then he goes on to describe it. And I'll go back for you to show you a picture of the McCarthy. It's to the lower right.
Yep.
Right.
Well, did he tell you what that costs?
He didn't build it, but I did ask Steve for a cost estimate, and I haven't gotten that yet. So once I get that, I'll add that into the budget. And we had a discussion about safety concerns with the goal facing the playground, but you can watch that at your own time. Any other questions or comments about this? I also reached out to, I know we had questions of what's the real, you know, we've got $100,000 cost for dredging the pond, and what's going to happen if we don't. So I reached out to Corey Rose, who's helped us a lot with the natural stuff on that side of the park, and her response was that in 15 to 25 years it'll fill in and be taken over ultimately by the Phragmites, which is the stuff on the right-hand side. And that picture just shows how tall it gets. So that's a person standing there close by. And that's already actually on the eastern shore of the pond. There's some growth there, and we've been trying to cut the seed pods that you can see at the top off so it doesn't grow out anymore. But she said that besides the Phragmites, and you've got the algae growth. And she said that the water quality is already suffering significantly and probably can't hold fish anymore due to a lack of oxygen. But I think the takeaway here is that in 15 to 25 years, in her perspective at least, it's going to fill in. And if it does fill in, water quality or not, we're not going to have the pond as a skating facility. So I think that does at least justify why we've got the pond dredging in the budget. Any comments or questions about that? Why aerate a pond? There were a lot of questions about what's the benefit of it. Basically, in a nutshell, if you put air into the pond, it increases the bacteria eats the muck, and you have a healthier ecosystem. So it cuts down on the fill, as well as creates a habitat for the wildlife and stuff that's living inside the pond.
Bill, one question.
Yes.
Did it come up in our public input anywhere about the pond?
Yes. Dredging the pond,
Did come up.
deepening the pond.
Okay. I just didn't
Somebody
remember.
wanted to add fish to the pond.
Yep.
So
As
yeah.
long as stuff came out
And
and we
skating
didn't
as
just
well
throw
was
it in
obviously a
out of
lot,
the blue. Yep.
there. I wanted to clarify some information. We talked last week about the pond fountains. You remember that I put pond fountains into the budget, and I mentioned bubble tubing aeration. I just wanted to give you guys some background on that. It's actually not cheaper, but I don't think it's a viable solution for the pond for a couple of reasons. They actually use bubble tubing aeration in wastewater facilities, and what it does is it pushes oxygen into the water, increases the bacteria, and the bacteria eats all the stuff that's waste. The problem with it, with bubble tubing aeration is that it's a very maintenance intensive process, because what happens is these tubes, you can see in the lower right hand side, that's one of the tubes. They have to be pressure cleaned monthly because it creates the air, the bacteria grows onto the tube, and it just gets thick and it just stops working. So it's got to be taken out and cleaned monthly. The other thing that's bad about it is that it creates a lot of sound, because it's like an aquarium pump basically that sits outside the pond and pumps air in, and it would raise it from where the pond side is now at about the 54 dBs, and we'll get into that in a second, to up to 60 to 70. So you won't be hearing frogs anymore, you'll be hearing pond pumps. So I don't think that really is a good solution, and it's got a 10-year estimated life. So do you guys agree that we shouldn't include that on the plan?
Right.
So I'm just gonna, for the time being, leave the fountains on the plan, if that's, if you guys agree?
Sure.
So this weekend I went out, I spoke with the Board of Health, who is the governing body for sound and noise regulations. I used their equipment and went out and measured park noise or sound levels at the top of the upper parking lot, looking down into the field. And I think this is good because it at least gives us a baseline to work off of. And the plan is that we have this baseline of noise levels or sound levels now. I'll do the same thing with the community band performances that are happening in the center after the 4th. And then we can kind of compare and see how these numbers relate. But the Saturday baseball games, the 3 times that I went out there, I was out there for 15 minutes each, which was the prescribed amount that I read that would work. And the levels really varied between 62 dBs to 72 dBs. And where that falls on this typical noise level meter is somewhere between sitting inside of a car to, what is this one? Noise level at a amphitheater. That's in the 80 range. So I'm sorry, that's too high. A vacuum cleaner is at the top of 79. So it's sort of in that range.
Saturday skewed, because that was me.
Saturdays are what?
Saturday skewed, because that was me.
Oh. Well, it was, and actually it was a lot quieter. I mean, really the meters really jumped up when the wind blew more. So it was really, I was expecting, just from what little knowledge I have about sound meters, that it would be a lot higher, but it wasn't. And then I went out and I measured, there was an event, a stargazing event that happened Sunday night, and I went out and measured it, and it was actually lower than the Saturday baseball games. So, and there were probably, I don't know, 40 kids. The upper parking lot was completely filled. So, you know, from a noise standpoint, I didn't see, compared to this noise level chart that I'm looking at, I didn't see a lot of noise, right? And then I took a reading pond side just to be able to compare that, and that was sort of on the other side of the garage. So it was somewhat filtered from the sound in that sense. There was still a baseball game going on, but the numbers there weren't, you know, they were pretty close to where the Saturday games were. So it was more, you know, it was more frogs than kids at that making the noise there. And like I said, I'll add in the community game information as well. Any other comments or questions about those? Next steps. So we currently have the public input session planned for Tuesday. Katie, what types of information do you normally see handed out at public input sessions? Do you know? Can you provide any input on that?
I mean, I would probably just print the master plan where it is, just so it's easier to read than have it up on the screen.
Okay.
Where is it going to be, in this room?
No, it's going to be in the police headquarters training room at 7 o'clock.
So they
on
set
Tuesday
the
the
screen
20th.
and it's, you know, it's more like theater seating, so, I mean, I would probably just have, probably just copies of the plan, really.
Can you provide those?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. So you can bring those to the meeting? Are you planning on being in there?
So I have to be at EDC that night too, so I'll come over afterwards.
Can you get copies of the plan to
Yeah,
either me or
yeah.
Steve beforehand?
Yeah, beforehand, absolutely.
Okay. We then have the park site walk scheduled for the following Saturday. Do you guys want to actually mark off the proposed locations of the fields and bandstands with cones so that when we do take the walk, we can point to certain areas and say this is sort of where the general area what we're talking about? Or do you think that's not necessary?
It might be a nice visual aid, actually.
Do we have an effective way of doing that? I mean, of measuring exactly where this is gonna be because we're expanding and moving and,
Yeah.
It's going to be real
Maybe-
line of sight. It's a process. It's kind of tough, but it's
You might just have to walk
Exactly,
around and
exactly.
say, here's where you would be standing in front of the pavilion, and here's where you would be in baseball field lawn, or you might have to just walk around and hand
So
wave
do
it
you
in.
want to put markers out? Do you guys want to put? Do you see any downside to that, Katie? Putting markers out?
Only because you'll get people wandering, asking questions and not following along. So it might be better just to follow along as a group as the original sidewalk that we did as a group.
Okay.
Have people follow along, and that way they're listening to the one person, and they have to follow you to the next location
Sure.
rather than kind of going off,
Right.
trying to
Okay.
figure stuff out.
The cones might be in the middle of like a baseball field right
They
now.
will be in the middle of
Yeah,
baseball.
and people are gonna be like, I don't
Isn't
get
the
it.
season over though?
No, not that they're gonna be in the way, just that people are gonna be like, I don't get it. Like, you're gonna, I think you're better off explaining what the cones mean.
Okay. Anybody
Yeah.
else? Anybody want to put cones out? No. So no cones. The next.
Quick comment on that. Katie, if you can provide GPS coordinates, then putting out the cones would be very easy.
We don't have the budget for that.
I don't think it's not built in that way, right?
No, I think what we're talking about is not the ease of it. I think it would be pretty easy to eyeball it. It's just kind of keeping people together and
Okay.
understanding what we're looking at, I think. Because there's not going to be any descriptions of the cones themselves.
Yep.
So,
Okay.
We'll just do it by sight, just pointing. So the next meeting we have scheduled is the July 18th. And I'd like to talk to you guys, and I mentioned this in the email, about, I think we need to schedule a meeting in between the public input session to incorporate the feedback, give Katie enough time to make any changes that we feel like we've discussed and want to make, get that plan back, and then we'll vote on it on the 18th. Do you guys agree with that?
I thought we couldn't find a time that was earlier than the 18th. I think
Yeah.
that's why we ended up on the 18th.
So if we do wait until the 18th, though, we're only giving Katie less than 5 working days to make any revisions that we've gotten from the,
I get it. There just wasn't another day that the committee was able to land on.
How many people do we need here at each meeting to have a meeting?
4. So here's the weekly schedule. So it's basically finding a day, either the week of the 25th, the 2nd, or the 9th.
Yeah. 2nd or the 9th is best for me, but I know everybody had different. Yeah, the week of the 9th is actually, I think, is the best for me.
and just as a committee, I mean, as long as we're not wholesaling this plan, it's not going to take long to make revisions. So I could certainly do it quickly. As long as we're not starting over. It's just some tweaking
There's no
here and
promises. I don't
there.
know.
We almost,
Okay.
watch it later, he almost sprouted us over again. Move the whole thing.
Yeah. We'll see what happens on Tuesday. So do you guys, I can tell you what, at least what the availabilities on room-wise are. This room is available on Wednesday or Thursday of the 5th or the 6th of July, correct. The following week, the 12th or the 13th, this room is available.
I can't do the 12th or the 13th.
And if there's a, and we could do a meeting at the library if we had to. It's just the availability for this room and the rooms that are in here are pretty
I'm
limited.
fine with any of those, but.
Any good days, those 2 weeks? The 25th, the 2nd?
They're all good for me.
So the 5th to the 6th, or the 12th to the 13th were the two that you just gave, right?
5th, 6th, 12th, 13th. I don't have,
Yeah, those are fine.
if there's other days that are good, I can look into finding an alternate meeting room
I can
somewhere
do the
else.
5th or the 6th.
You can do the 5th to the 6th as well. Not
I
ideal.
may be able to do it, I may be away that week. That's up in the air.
So I have 3 for the 5th or 6th. We need one more to have a quorum.
I could do the 5th or the 6th, sure.
Okay.
Sure.
And you'll check, Alice?
Yeah.
And Bill, you have any availability? You don't know?
I don't even have my summer baseball schedule yet, so I don't know. So I just say, book it, I'll get here.
All right, so do you want to say the Thursday the 6th to give you a day after the 4th? Just to,
Yeah, I mean, oh yeah, you said the 6th, yeah, so that's good. I'm gonna override this that's on the calendar.
is that a yes, the 6th?
Sure.
Works for me.
Chris?
Yeah, no, I was fine with that.
Okay, so I will schedule the meeting for the 6th. The plan will be that we will incorporate the feedback from the public input session on the 20th, give Katie whatever changes we need to give to her, and then vote on the individual features and improvements on the 18th.
And I think we have to have on the agenda on the 18th, what Bill brought up last time, is we have to shorten the presentation for the Board of Selectmen down to a reasonable amount of slides with a large appendix versus just
I think
everything
that'll
in the
happen
method.
before the next meeting.
Oh, you're-
After, it'll happen for the 20th, I think.
Okay, you're gonna,
I don't think we want to go in front of the public with necessarily that much detail. We can answer questions with the detail, you know?
Right.
But just to get like maybe 2 or 3 slides and then get into the meat of the questions.
and you're gonna take care of that.
Yeah.
You've been doing all that, so thank you. But
Okay. Public input, just to let you guys kind of know where we are on this. The abutter mailing, we have 1,000 postcards that should be in the mailboxes on Friday. And it's roughly the top and bottom. So this is a little bit different. This is an image that we're going to use to circulate, and we'll talk about that. But it's roughly the back, the front where the postage would be is the top, and the back of the site plan is the front. We'll share that particular image on Facebook and then through our own email list of 51 names. And then if we can get additional help with other people that have list distributions,
can
like
I get,
Chelmsford Mothers
yeah,
Club.
if you can get me it as a PDF,
Yes.
I will get it on the Chelmsford Mothers Club, several things. They have like 5 different ways they
Okay.
get messaged out.
Can you guys share it with baseball? Is that something you guys do?
Yep.
Your email list?
Yep.
So I should send
Again, just
you.
give me a PDF, I can send it out.
Okay. Is there anybody else that we can think of that we should, I can send the same thing, and Lacrosse will probably do it as well?
Yep.
We should have
I'm sure they will.
the bands send it out to the bands list if they actually have any skin in the game on this, because they keep asking, but they haven't really put a lot of representation behind it, but they should.
Any suggestions from the audience about people that could be helpful in getting the message out? So Steve's going to print out these large images, and then I'll work on the laminating if we need to. Is there anybody, well, I was hoping some folks might be here that could help with distributing the flyers, putting them out places. I'll put one at the playground, I'll put one on the map kiosk. Is there other places that you guys would want to add?
Put them in the library?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
If I give
Library.
you guys a copy, can you put it there?
Sure.
Anywhere else? No? I'm gonna go on Town Talk tomorrow. Does anybody want to go with me?
What is
Sorry, nope.
TV show?
Town talk.
Yeah, it's cable access with Joe Reddy. 6 o'clock tomorrow, Wednesday at Parker. Come on, who wants to go with me?
I actually am busy. I'm not just making an excuse, I really can't.
I
do
wish
it.
I could.
Yes,
All
again.
right, well, I'll
You
try
know
to
you represent us well.
So, I don't know if you were here or not, but, so Paul said that we are not gonna be able to get a one-off funding for this. That's gonna have to be broken up into multiple fiscal,
That would be the
right.
case.
So, we agreed that we were gonna have to create priorities for the features. Do you feel like it would be helpful to create a short, survey, to put out there between, now and our next meeting that would ask 3 to 5 questions, you know, would you support this plan, yes or no, why or why not? You know, would you come to a concert at the community bandstand? What is which of these features are your greatest priority? Please rank, you know, from 1 to 10. Those kinds of questions.
Would we wait till after public input? I would think we would need to, because if asking if they'd come to a band concert when we just heard from 65 people that they don't want to put, you know, a multi-use pavilion like that, maybe we don't want to do that.
Well, so first let me say it's an online survey, right? So, and I think that we could actually use it to help drive attendance to the public input session. So I think it's separate, and I think we could also encourage people at the public input session to take the survey.
I'm trying to figure out, what's the point, what are you trying to get at with the survey versus folks coming and discussing the plan that's in place?
I'm trying to accomplish the same thing with both. I'm trying to figure out what stuff they want to see in the plan, what they're willing to pay for and support, and then also what their priorities are for implementation and
So,
paying
but
for.
hasn't there already been a survey already put out ahead of time? And there was also a public input session. Now we're doing a second public input session. Are we just trying to get more information for no particular reason, or is there, I mean, I'm not trying to be mean, I'm trying to figure out what the end goal of getting more information is.
If I can make a comment, I think what I'm hearing here is you want to know if you have to break it up, what do you want to do first?
It's one of the questions.
Which is a little different from which is most important, what could be. In other words, the playground might presumably would be one of the first ones, but
Again, I
aren't
go,
you heading for that, Bill?
Well, I think that having the data of a recent community survey saying X number of people believe that this $1 million plan is a worthwhile use of town money would be a good way to support plan.
I have a question. Sorry.
Or it might say that we're so totally off base with the $1 million plan that we should start cutting.
Well, so that was my question, is we're putting out a survey, which is then a public document, which then we have to report in our master plan, and being in this sales industry and other things, there's two people that fill out surveys. They're the people who really, really love it, or the people who really, really hate it. And you don't usually get the people in the middle to even comment. And if for the people that really, really hate it, that's a valid point. But I would like for that to be, the people in the meeting that show up, I would love to have something to hand them to do just that. To send it out online and to weigh it the same as the people that took the time to come to the public input session, I worry, because you're just gonna, number one, you could just fill it out 10 times.
And that's not, you can put controls so that you can only get one.
But even if you could do multiple email addresses, I have 6 email addresses, I could fill it out all with the same.
That's a different issue.
But either way, I worry, I think the public input session is the way we want to go. If we want to ask people at the public input session these kind of questions, I think that's very valuable information. I worry until we see what comes in from the public input session, just blasting it out there, because I think that may then hamper our end plan, because it got shifted to a lot of people saying the playground's big enough, don't make it any bigger, and they don't have the information behind the reason we're making the playground bigger is because we're trying to keep all the trees, and that's the only reason we're expanding the area, so we can fit the equipment in and facilitate the trees and make nice shade in the playground. And it's not just a square footage question.
So are you suggesting that we do a playground, do a public input session survey, written survey only, or
Yeah.
no surveys at all?
If you're gonna do one, I would say do it at the public input session for the people to come, just to check off priorities there, while they're there. And then if we get the feedback, we could always send out another one online after that public input
I
session.
wouldn't even do a survey, because again, you're going to the point of, you're going in front and you're basically presenting a master plan. And ultimately, you're saying, this is what we're looking for, this is about what it's going to cost. And ultimately, the town is the one that is going to decide that it's going to be a phased approach and how best to do that.
Well,
In
we
order
have
to
to make
get-
a recommendation for which phases and how we should chunk it up.
Why? The town ultimately is the one that's going to be doing all of the work. They're the ones that are going to be able to best phase things based on whatever else is going on in the town. So if it's, for example, cheaper for them to start with the baseball fields in the back first and then open up all that space before doing the playground, then that's what they should do. If it's to do the playground first, then that's what they should do.
So you're saying we should ask Steve we should put Steve in charge of the chunking it up? Because it's more of a maintenance issue?
That's what I'm saying. I
Or
mean,
more of a-
because we don't know what other, I mean, we're just presenting them with a master plan of what we'd like to see done. And ultimately, we don't know what all of the other projects that are going on in town that that they're assigned to. So they may be able to do one part of it the first year, then take a break the second year, and then the third year they have the funding to do the rest of it. So again, it all depends on what else is going on in the town at the time.
So you feel like we should get the town to do the priorities then?
Yes, again, we're presenting a master plan and saying, and then the town can go back to us and say, you know what, we can do this, it's gonna take us 3 years to get there, and then we'll get there. Or they can come back and go, you know what, we can do it all in 1 year, which obviously they already kind of said that they can't do that, so that's what we're getting at.
Can I ask you a question on that? Would it make sense to you to say, okay, let the town make the decision, but at least give them information that says, you know, if you can accommodate these things in a number of different ways, the public would really prefer if we can pull it off to do this first and that second.
Well, I think we can make suggestions like this, such as when you go to, you make you make the plan and you put it forward and say, you know what, do the best you possibly can to not have us without a playground, or something along those lines, or have it down as limited as amount of time as possible. I mean, those are the types of things that you could try to express to them, but again, ultimately, you're putting forward your plan, and then the town is going to decide whether.
I agree with that the town does decide, but we have to make it clear that the playground is going to be shut down for safety, right? No matter what, at the end of this year, the playground has to be basically torn down, right? Isn't that what we've been hearing consistently?
That's what we've been hearing. We
Yeah.
agree, and it's not to that point where they're gonna shut it down for safety reasons. But I mean, it could be. So I mean, my guess is that
I'm
they're
just saying we need to make that point clear. Yeah.
But I guess what I'm hearing too is that community demand isn't necessarily going to play a part in the rollout of this master plan.
I don't see how it can. I mean, I just.
I'm good with that. It's less work for us, so that's
Yeah,
fine.
no, I mean, again, that's what sort of happened at the Varney projects and stuff like that. They basically just come up with the master plan and then they go and implement it. Now, if it takes 1 year or 2 years or 3 years, but as long as they, follow what our suggestions are, I think we're all pretty happy with that. So I think that's where we should head.
Okay. So no survey. Everybody's agreed?
Again, we can certainly ask them for their input, as, again, they're giving us input, we can ask them what they would, and again, my guess is they're going to say, limit the downtime of the playground, limit the downtime of the pieces that are there.
Right.
May I ask a
Chris doesn't look
question?
very happy about this.
What's that?
I'm
You don't
curious.
look very happy about this.
No, I'm very happy.
Oh, I meant Chris, because he was the one who was talking about that.
So Maggie.
Oh, I'm fine.
No,
It's 10.
okay. I just had a question about how many people you expect to show up at the public input. What was it like the last session? I don't think I was able to make it.
We were in a room downstairs, and the room was filled. I have the head
Some
count somewhere.
10s, 50, 60, or
I
200?
honestly, I expect the room to be pretty full. I think people are going to show up, especially considering some of the neighbors that were here tonight. And I hope they do. I hope people come and, just, if they have problems with it, let us know. I highly encourage them to bring that emotion and let's talk it through.
Agree. I think we've done our due diligence, so I'd love to hear their
Right.
information back.
Which, honestly, that, my thinking on the survey was that gives someone who may not be comfortable in a open environment like that, to have an open-ended question to say, I hate this plan because, right? And it may show up something that we have, I get, I
Remember, you
understand
have a
it,
website, you've had that open session already.
but I don't have
People-
that, well, that was a while back, though. That was 2 years ago.
I don't like the idea of people being able to hide behind that.
Correct.
If they have something
I'm
that
good
they
with that.
want to
I'm good.
say,
Yeah.
I really think they need to be brave enough to stand up and say it. I think the anonymity of being online lets you gripe about a lot of things without being able to back it up with, good and well-founded reasons for how you feel. And I think people should bring their reasons. If there's something they don't like, if there's something they really love, I hope they'll bring those things. I hope the people who love the plan or elements of the plan will say why they do. We love the games, we want to come to the games, or I've been waiting for a path to walk on, or, yay, a great, playground. Or if people are just really opposed to things, I really hope that we can get great constructive feedback to refine this and be something that's fantastic for the community. But that means the people give us their input, not anonymously.
Okay,
Agreed.
so no survey. Anything else you guys want to talk about tonight? We're actually done.
Do we need to talk about the walking trail, just the width of it?
Oh, yeah, 6
Were
foot.
we gonna increase it?
I think we agreed that it was 6 feet.
Okay.
I thought
Yeah.
that it was 6
Yep.
feet, and that we were going to look at the, I've already forgotten the name of
The
it.
fines.
Crushed fines.
Decorum for the public input session. As everybody's noticed, I have no problem just speaking up to answer a question.
So
It's
we,
supposed to-
so there's a couple ways we could do it. We could actually all sit at the front table, which I think was the way to go, and make the presentation and just sort of field questions.
Sure.
You guys good with that?
I'm fine with that. So basically how we've been running these.
Right. But probably less of us talking and more
Hopefully, yes.
listening.
Yes.
All right, any other questions, comments? None. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Seconded.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.